After funding my parents' bills for 7 years, my brother said, "You don't even have kids." So I cut them off and booked a flight to Spain. I left work early, skipped the bonus dinner, and took a $540 flight on Christmas Eve. My chair had a sticky note for Troy's fiancée. "She's new here," my mom explained. "We figured you'd be fine standing," I replied. "Sure." I then took my luggage and departed. My sister texted 31 minutes later. "So sensitive." It wasn't a big deal. I accessed my app and paused family support. But what my father said at 9:04 p.m. changed everything. I flew cross-country for this. A one-way ticket cost $540. I left the office at midday, skipped the corporate bonus dinner, shoved everything into a duffel bag, and rushed to the airport. Because family mattered. Because I still felt that showing up meant something. I had not seen them in person since the previous Christmas. We had completed the group video calls, birthday texts, and "miss you too" emoticons. But this year, I was returning home. I imagined the fragrance of roasted ham, how my mother always burned the first batch of cookies, and how my father pretended not to cry at midnight prayer. I imagined sitting at the table. It turns out it had already been taken. Literally. I strolled into the dining room with snow still melting in my hair, holding a half-soggy present bag containing Dad's favorite whiskey, and noticed the post-it note first. A small pink square on the back of a dining chair, reserved for Troy's fiancée. That is it. No joke. No haha gotcha. Just those 5 words written in Mom's handwriting. I stood there squinting at the note, as if it could disappear if I squint hard enough. "Oh," Mom replied, strolling out of the kitchen with her typical smile, as if I hadn't traveled 3 time zones for dinner. "She's new here," she explained with a shrug. "We figured you'd be fine standing." Standing like a waiter. Or worse, I felt like I didn't belong. I answered, "Sure," quietly, automatically. Then I turned back, grabbed my luggage, and departed. I made it 31 minutes down the ice road before my phone rang. "So sensitive." "It wasn't a big deal," my sister said. "Not even a name. Just that." I stared at the message, heart racing and thumb twitching above the reply button. I then entered my banking app and paused the family support transfers. Done. But what my father said at 9:04 p.m. changed everything. It was not a post-it note. Not really. That was merely a match. The gas had been escaping for several years. I did not drive back to the motel. I parked at a petrol station down the road, watched the snow accumulate on my windshield, and turned up the heat till my ears hurt. Then I started thinking. The truth is, I've always been the one who made it easy for them. When I obtained my first IT job, Dad exclaimed, "Now you can finally take care of your family." He wasn't joking. That implied, start paying the bills. So I did. I began covering their internet, automobile insurance, and even their winter heating. Quietly. Automatically. Because that is what good boys do, correct? Troy was a dreamer. Dropped out of college. Spent 2 years couch surfing and discovering himself. When he returned broke and battered from a failed ski business, I let him live with me for 9 months rent-free. I even paid for the therapy sessions that he claimed would restore his focus. When Mom underwent dental surgery last year, guess who paid the $3,400 tab that was not covered by insurance? Me. When Dad's old Ford broke down and he needed a dependable ride to church, who co-signed the lease for a new one? Me. I've never complained, never brought it up, even when I had to cancel vacations, even while I was eating peanut butter for lunch and wiring money for someone else's cable bill. So when my sister texted, "So sensitive," I wanted to toss my phone in the snow. I did not. Instead, I accessed our family group chat, went through months of conversations, and noticed a trend. Every time I shared a win, a promotion, a work trip, or a raise, I received one or two positive responses. Meanwhile, Troy's new girlfriend is making cookies. 27 comments, 3 heart emojis, and mom's message, she's such a keeper. It did not stop there. Last July, I flew up to surprise mom on her birthday. I arrived at midnight, slept on the couch because Troy had taken over my old room temporarily and awoke to find them gone. They had taken Troy's fiancé to a wine tasting with his then girlfriend. I found a note on the fridge that said, "Be back by 5. Make yourself comfy." They did not even save me a sliver of cake. However, I still paid the next month's gas payment. Because it's what I was raised to do. Provide. Be the stable one. The invisible one. Troy could walk in with debt, bad credit, and a woman he met 3 months ago, and they would move heaven and earth to accommodate her, including giving her my chair. That sticky note was not simply a seating arrangement. It was a message. You are no longer needed. So I made a few calls. I canceled my automatic transfers. I notified the accountant that I was going to halt the family trust donations I had been making for years, because Dad preferred a retirement plan that did not involve the IRS. Then, for the first time in years, I acted absolutely selfishly. I got Thai takeaway, very spicy, and sat in that hotel room alone with my laptop open and Netflix playing, and for once, I felt nothing but clarity. Until 9:04 p.m. That was when Dad called. I stared at the screen for a time, contemplating if I should respond. My finger hovered, and then tapped. "Hey," I said. Flat. There was a pause, the kind that is full of meaning. "You've left," he said. "Sure did. Your mom's upset. She's also the one who gave my chair away." Another pause. This time the duration is longer. "She didn't mean anything by it." Sure, let's say she didn't. "What about Troy texting me 2 hours ago asking if I could help fund their wedding next summer?" Silence. "Right," I answered. "You didn't know that part." Dad exhaled, deep, hefty, and familiar. "You know how things are. Troy's not as fortunate as you." "Fortunate?" I asked, laughing. "No, Dad. Troy's recklessness. I'm responsible. There's a difference. He's getting better. She's good for him. She's sitting in my chair. Don't be dramatic." So there it was. The golden phrase. They always used this one when I dared to speak up. I closed my eyes and pinched the bridge of my nose. "You know what, Dad? I'm done being the guy who works 60 hours a week so everyone else can play pretend. I'm done being your safety net. We never asked for it." "That's nonsense," I retorted. "You expected it. You think because I never complained I'm okay with it? Well, here's the truth, I'm not. I haven't been for a long time." Silence. Then softly. "Son, it's Christmas Eve. And I'm spending it alone in a motel next to a gas station because you needed Troy's fiancé to feel welcome more than you needed your son at the table." Dad did not speak again, so I ended the conversation. And that was the last I heard from him for 4 days. I hadn't planned to return. Not after everything they did. Not after what they haven't done. But Troy contacted me 3 days after Christmas. His number appeared on my screen, and my immediate reaction was to disregard it. "But curiosity is a nasty thing," I responded. "What?" There was hesitancy. Then, "Hey man, so, weird question. Did you cancel the family support transfers?" I slumped back in my chair. "Yeah." "You didn't tell anyone?" "Wasn't required." "Okay," he replied hesitantly. "Well, things are kind of tight. The January mortgage bounced." "I'm aware." Silence. Then, in the softest, most deceptive voice I've ever heard him use, "Maybe we could talk." I laughed. Hard. "Oh, now you want to talk? What changed?" Troy ran out of post-it notes. It was just a seat, bro. Number. It was a message. You and Mom made that pretty clear. I hung up. 5 minutes later, Mom texted. Mom, could we meet for coffee, please? It's not as you think. I didn't respond because I knew what was coming. Dad called that night. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. I think we need to talk, face to face, Sunday dinner. I glanced at the phone, my heart pounding. Sunday supper, my old ritual. Pot roast, apple pie. Everyone pretended that they weren't quietly bleeding me dry. Something inside of me shouted go, but not to reconcile. To end it. I showed up on Sunday evening. Knocked once and let myself in, as I always did. The home was clean, suspiciously clean, as if they were staging a peace treaty. Mom walked out first, wearing an apron. You came, she remarked, smiling as if we hadn't forgotten each other over Christmas. Dad was in the armchair, holding his reading glasses as if he wanted to appear busy. Troy and his fiancée sat on the couch. She refused to look at me, most likely because she was embarrassed. Good, dinner's almost ready, Mom remarked. No need, I replied. I'm not here to eat. Everyone froze. I'm here for one reason, to say some things I should have said years ago. Sweetheart, Mom said. No, I interrupted. You don't get to sweetheart me. Not after what you pulled. It was just a post-it note. You think this is about that chair? I laughed. That was the cherry. The Sunday is 20 years of you all treating me just as the dependable one. Never seen as a person, only as a solution. Troy scoffed. Dude, you're being dramatic again. Don't. Just don't. I turned to face Dad. You let it happen. You watched me work overtime, pay your bills, cancel my vacations, while you threw parties for this fool when he remembered to tie his shoes. You let him sit in my seat and ask me for money in the same breath. And the worst part? You all thought I'd just keep doing it. Dad stood slowly. We never asked you to. Exactly. You expected it. Because I never said no. Troy leaned forwards. You were always the one with money. You don't even have kids. It wasn't a big deal. I turned to face him, fury in my chest. You know what is a big deal? Working 60-hour weeks so Mom can have cable and you can plan a rustic vineyard wedding for your Tinder match. I was good enough to pay for your therapy, but not good enough to sit down at the dinner table. Got it. Mom looked like she was going to cry. We didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean anything, that's the problem. You never thought. Not about me. Only about what I could give. The room was silent. I then removed the envelope from my jacket and tossed it on the table. What's this? Dad inquired. Your taxes. I won't be doing them this year. You'll need a new CPA. Wait, what? Mom asked, bewildered. I transferred the car lease back to your name, canceled the insurance, and you have 60 days before the health coverage under my name expires. Oh, and Troy. He looked up, puzzled. That wedding fund you asked about? Spend it on chairs, because I'm not coming. You're not serious, Mom exclaimed. Oh, I'm dead serious. You made room for someone else. I'm choosing to make space for myself now. I walked out. They did not follow me. They did not stop me. This time, they knew. When I left that house, I was expecting silence. What I didn't expect was how peaceful the silence would seem. The kind of silence that protects you like armor. There's no buzzing phone. There are no guilt-tipped requests. No more, can you just help out this one time? Which usually escalated into a dozen. Just silent. On Monday, I entered my office with a smile that surprised the receptionist. You win the lottery? She inquired. I laughed. Kind of. I did not explain. But that was the first day in years that I drank my coffee hot, ate lunch without checking my bank balance after transferring someone a rent payment, and slept through the night without receiving a text from Troy saying, "Bro, can you help out just until Friday?" By Wednesday, the text had started. "Mom, honey, your father is upset. He suggests we should chat. Please come this weekend." Ignored. Then Troy. "Hey man, Dad says you canceled their dental insurance. That's not right." Troy. "Do you still have the login to your Hulu account? We can't get in." I blocked him. Then Dad called. I didn't respond. He left a message, which began calmly, and concluded as a threat. "I just don't understand how you can abandon your family like this after everything we've done for you." I laughed so hard that I almost dropped my phone. After all they'd done for me? You mean like giving my chair to a stranger? Like accepting every financial bailout I offered while still treating me like a troublesome child whenever I established a boundary? Not this time. They expected me to cave, feel horrible, and walk back as I always did. Instead, I made things worse for them. I thrived. I signed up for a 2-week photography retreat in Oregon. Something I'd always wanted to do but couldn't afford because I was always paying other people's bills. I rejoined my gym, took long walks. I deleted the family group chat. I blocked my sister after she added me back. I went out for drinks with a few coworkers and, for the first time, didn't lie about why I was constantly exhausted. I stated the truth. My family is a financial black hole and I finally cut the cord. One guy raised his glass. Respect. That word means something different now. Respect wasn't about not making a fuss. It was about saying enough. Then came the call. 9:04 p.m. Exactly 2 weeks after the Christmas Eve debacle. I almost didn't respond. The number was blocked. But something prompted me to swipe. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was quiet. "Ra. Hey, it's Dad." He sounded older. Tired. "Okay, I'm at the hospital," he explained. I sat upright. "What happened?" "Your mother collapsed in the kitchen. Dehydration, stress. Doctor says it's nothing fatal, but she's shaken and she's been crying, asking for you." I said nothing. "You've made your point," he added, loud and clear. "But maybe now you can stop punishing us." My blood boiled. "Punishing you? You think I'm punishing you because I stopped being your ATM?" "I'm just saying, your mom." "My mom let me walk out of Christmas dinner like a ghost. Don't drag her tears into this now." Silence. Finally, quietly. "She told me about the chair. Said it was her idea. She thought Troy's fiancé would feel awkward otherwise. And it never occurred to anyone that I might feel unwelcome. We didn't mean it that way." "That's the problem. You never mean it that way. But it's always the same story. I give. You take." Another lapse in stillness. Then he whispered, "I miss you, son." Something twisted inside my chest. Not in pain. No regrets. Just clarification. "I miss who you used to be too," I replied. Before you sold me out for convenience." So I hung up. Days have gone. Then I received a message that wasn't from Troy. From her. Troy's fiancée. The girl who occupied my seat. Text. "Hey, I understand you probably don't want to hear from me, but I just wanted to say, I did not know." Pause. Another message. Text. "Your mother told me you'd be late. You said you wouldn't stay long. I only learned what happened after you departed. If I had known, I would not have taken your chair. And here's the kicker." Text. "Troy told me you were wealthy, that you'd be okay standing, that you don't care about family matters anyway. I'm so sorry." For a little while, I was unsure how to feel. But the truth struck like a punch. He was aware of my impending arrival. He instructed her to take my chair. He knew exactly what it would do. And he wanted it. Troy had always disliked what I represented: responsibility, success, and repercussions. He was the turmoil they cherished. I was the anchor they relied on. And resented. Well, not anymore. The next week, my parents sent me an official email. Subject: resolution proposal. A PDF document containing budgets, timeframes, and independence plans was included. It reads like a business pitch, a desperate one. They were trying to show that they could manage without me. I am begging for a second chance. Requesting 3 additional months of transitional support before proceeding with full financial separation. I stared at the figures. Then, select delete. By March, the calls had stopped. By April, I had stopped using all shared accounts. By May, I'd arranged a solo trip to Barcelona. And sometime between the aircraft ride and the first taste of tapas, I discovered something I'd never believed before. I didn't need them. Not like they had made me believe. Not to define myself. This is not to legitimize me. And definitely not to own me. Barcelona was quite loud. It wasn't the traffic, the crowds, or even the festivals. It was the way the world seemed louder when you stepped out of someone else's shadow. I went into the Gothic Quarter with my phone in airplane mode. No family group conversations. There are no texts from Troy. No. Just one more, bro. Just the sound of my feet on ancient cobblestones. And the exhilaration of silence earned rather than given. Every night, I viewed the sunset from a different part of the city. On the 4th night, a stranger approached my table at a rooftop pub and wanted to join. She had wild locks and eyes that did not apologize for staring right through you. We spent hours talking about everything and nothing. She wanted to know where I was from. I corrected myself. Used to be a family man. Now I'm just a man. She laughed. Sounds like freedom. I nodded. Finally, back home, life continued as usual. I was promoted to lead systems architect. People fought for this job since it allowed them to meet with board members and provide feedback on corporate direction. My manager informed me, "You've been under the radar too long. People are starting to notice." That hit me differently. For years, I was the man who discreetly kept things together at work, home, and everywhere else. People needed more than just me. They respected me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a utility. In June, something unexpected showed up at my door. A wedding invitation. Troy with his fiancée. Rustic Vineyard. July 16th. RSVP deadline is June 30th. I placed it on the kitchen counter. Allow it to sit there like an exam I already knew the answer to. The envelope was cream. Thick stock. Expensive. Inside, next to the RSVP card, was a handwritten note from her. "I hope you will come." He still doesn't realize what he did, and I believe part of him is afraid to confess it. You were correct to walk away. But perhaps he needs to see you stand firm. In person. I stared at the note for a long time, then threw it in the trash. On July 16th, the day of the wedding, I spent it at a beach in Santa Cruz, riding a rented bike along the cliffs and allowing the sea wind to refresh me. I did not check my phone till after sunset. 1 missed call. Mom. 1 message. Mom. He kept glancing at the door all night, as if he were waiting for you. I stared at it. Didn't respond. Not that I wanted to punish him, but I'd had enough of playing savior for individuals who never reserved a seat for me. August provided a surprise. I ran into Troy's fiancée, now wife, at a bookshop. She appeared thinner, paler, like someone straining too hard to grin through shattered glass. She noticed me, froze, and walked over. "I didn't expect to see you," she admitted. "I live here," I answered. She paused. Then, We moved back in with your parents. Of course they did. They offered. She replied swiftly. Said it was just temporary. Troy's job didn't pan out. He's still figuring things out. It always is. She gazed down at her hands. He's not handling things well. Not my problem. Then she looked up, her eyes ringed with red. I know. I wish you were his brother. That stuck with me longer than I anticipated. Not that I felt sorry for him. However, for the first time, someone noticed it. I did not respond, just nodded. Then I walked out with my book. September. My birthday. I hadn't expected anything. I wasn't waiting for it. But shortly before noon, a delivery arrived. There's no return address. Inside is a basic black box, a folded card, a single line. You were right about everything. I'm sorry. Inside was the whiskey I packed for Christmas Eve, still sealed. They had never opened it. I sat there staring at the bottle. Then I got up, strolled to my balcony, and opened it myself, poured a glass, to no one except me. By November, I had sold my condominium and relocated out of state. New location, larger windows, new furnishings, no ghosts. The final step. I changed my phone number. I deleted the old backups. We've burned the last bridge. But before I did, I penned a message. I copied it. I sent it to Mom, Dad, and Troy. Same message. There's no space for negotiation. This is the final communication you will receive from me. I am not angry. I'm just finished. I've given you everything I have for years. Time, money, love, and patience. You used it. I spent it, and called it normal. Then you left me standing, literally. I'm not standing anymore. I am walking away. For good. No hard sentiments. Just rigid bounds. Goodbye. Sent. I finally let go. Peacefully. And now for the most important part. I do not miss them. Not the guilt. Not the manipulation. Not the awkward silences that followed each no I dared to express. Not the invisible weight of being the family's support beam as they constructed castles on my back. I miss the person I used to be around them. The guy who mistakenly believed that being needed meant being loved. He's gone now. Someone more powerful has taken his place. Smarter. Freer. So, maybe I missed Christmas supper. Perhaps I stood outside a house I had paid for, with a present that no one desired. But walking away. That was the best gift I ever gave myself. And this is the last gift I will ever offer. You don't have kids, be useful. My family stole $14,000 from my safe for my sister's baby. So I cut them off from everything I built. After hosting Christmas, I unlocked my safe. My emergency funds are gone. My father answered, "We gave it to your sister. She is establishing a family." My hands were cold. I called my lawyer that night. The next morning, a few emails were sent. Some accounts were checked. That afternoon, my sister called. "What did you do?" I just remarked, "You might want to check your inbox." Christmas was supposed to be calm this year. I hosted for once, not to brag, but because I figured if I supplied the warmth, they'd remember how to keep it. I cooked, cleaned, and purchased gifts for nieces and nephews who hardly recognized my name. My father sat at the head of the table like a statue in corduroy. My sister floats around the room, snapping pictures for her stories. And my mother? She was busy speaking behind folded napkins, too preoccupied to ask how I was doing. Nobody thanked me. Not for the food, not for the house, not even for allowing them to remain an extra 2 nights when their plumbing unexpectedly failed. I grinned through it. I let it go. I figured if I didn't make it about myself, they'd notice me anyhow. They did not. I went to check the safe after everyone had departed. The final pine needles had been vacuumed, and the wine glasses had been piled in the dishwasher. Not because I was concerned. Just a habit. Just something I did when the home was empty and the silence settled in. The combination clicks gently. The door swings open, and the cash was gone. Emergency funds. $14,000. Not a retirement fund. Not an investment. It's just about safety. The kind of money you save in case the world forgets about you. And it did. I did not panic. I did not shout. I just stood there, staring at the empty space as if it could apologize. That's when my father strolled in, cleaning his hands with a dish towel as if he lived here. "We gave it to your sister," he replied frankly. "She's starting a family." My hands got cold. Now we've borrowed it. Now she required assistance. Not even a warning. They opened my safe, took my emergency funds, and handed them away. And did not believe I deserved to know. I did not say anything. I walked to the corridor, sat on the bench by the coat rack, and took out my phone. One call. My lawyer answered the second call. "Evening," he said. "Something wrong?" I informed him what had happened. He hesitated and continued. "I'll start the paper trail tonight." I nodded, despite his inability to see me, hung up. The following hour was a blur. Several emails were sent out. Some accounts were checked. Keep everything quiet. Cold stuff. There is nothing dramatic. Not yet. That afternoon, my sister called. Her voice was sharp, furious, and half crying. "What did you do?" I did not raise my voice. I did not even sigh. "You might want to check your inbox," I remarked before hanging up. She messaged again, then again. And finally, "You're blowing this out of proportion." It was just sitting there. Emergency cash seems to appear out of nowhere, as if safes open themselves. I sat still. Coffee has gone cold. The laptop is silently blazing on my desk. Email threads are growing by the minute. I hadn't replied yet. I was remembering. This theft is just one of many. The safe was not a betrayal. It confirmed a trend too profound to ignore. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. A week before her wedding, my credit card was charged $9,800. You don't have a spouse or kids, you might as well make yourself useful. The bridesmaids laughed. She smirked. I grinned back and replied, "Then I hope you find me useless real soon." They took the cash as if it were air. And when I canceled everything, they accused me of being vengeful. They said I had covered the mortgage previously, but it was only a bridging payment. Then I found them buying patio furniture a week later. I repaid her automobile loan in 2021. The same day, she uploaded a selfie with the caption, "Nothing feels better than financial independence." She did not even tag me. Every time I gave, they removed the origin. Every time I remained mute, they made it appear as if they built the ladder themselves. I remembered my mother's voice as I volunteered to co-sign their refinance. "You're the only one we can count on." She said it as a compliment, but it was actually a sentence. And now this. Taking from the safe was the final footnote. I was not the son. I was always expected to assist rather than to be noticed. Every flashback brings greater clarity. On Christmas Eve, my seat was assigned to a neighbor. "You'll be fine in the kitchen." Anniversary supper for those who really matter. Backyard remodel. $12,400 obliterated with text. "Don't be dramatic." My sister's RSVP cards list my name as the return address. Her wedding is my credit line. The voicemail from Dad, "Maybe it's better you don't come anymore." Each scene was not a moment. It was a data point. I ran the entire system. They merely kept cashing their dividends. And the scariest part? They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. They had become so comfortable using me. They ceased pretending that I was a part of it. Even still, a part of me wished they'd stop before it was too late. I was not hoping for an apology. I simply desired hesitation. One pause. One sign told them they'd crossed a line. But no one blinked. Not her. Not him. Not anyone. So, I made a decision. No more flashbacks. No more patterns. No more polite sabotage. I was finished being useful. I was not going to argue. I was going to move on. This allowed them to confront the gaps they had never recognized. That night, after my sister called, I did not dispute. I did not explain. I did not attempt to reclaim what was taken. I reclaimed myself. The emails I sent after hanging up were not impulsive. They were precise. A checklist I'd been mentally creating for years without realizing it. The first one went to my lawyer. Prepare the official dissociation paperwork. Remove me from any joint accounts. Begin the asset protection review. Second, my financial advisor. Transfer all liquid assets to a safe trust. The immediate family is excluded. The third, my accountant. Examine all family-related payments for the last 5 years. Unauthorized ones should be flagged. Prepare the accompanying documentation. It was not about vengeance. It was about reclaiming my infrastructure. By midnight, I was hooked into the back end of the little IT company I had started from scratch. The same corporation that silently managed my parents' home security systems, online backups, mobile subscriptions, and accounting firm software licenses all fell under my corporate umbrella. All are free. All are unacknowledged. I removed their cloud cameras first, then the automated locks, and finally the smart thermostat they boasted about at every family dinner. I reconfigured the DNS setup, which disabled remote access to their home network. They no longer have access to the Wi-Fi that I established for them. When their printer failed, they no longer had to perform emergency troubleshooting. Next, consider a shared family phone plan. 5 lines. Mine, theirs, and my sister's. I did not cancel. I transferred ownership of all lines to them. If they did not accept within 72 hours, their service would be suspended. They would receive the bill. No more free calls. No more of me financing the family's communication infrastructure. Then I recalled. The streaming platforms. I took a step back from supporting their services and let them tackle it on their own. It was the slightest thing, but it stung. By daybreak, text messages began to arrive. My sister. Why are the security cameras inoperable? I can't log in. My father. The mortgage company called. What have you done? My mother. You are not serious about this, are you? I did not respond to any of them. They didn't ask. They demanded that the system be brought back online. But the system was me. And I was logging out. By lunchtime, they had called. I didn't respond. I waited till the voicemail symbol appeared. My father's voice. Let us resolve this gently. Let's talk like adults. I laughed aloud. He always returned to that line, talk like an adult, after standing by while I was robbed, marginalized, and erased. By the evening, my sister had messaged again. Netflix is not working. Fix it. I said, you said you didn't need me. No emojis, no punctuation. This is just a fact. But I wasn't finished. I accessed the back end of their accounting firm's IT system. They had no idea I still had administrative access. They assumed I had set it up years ago as a family favor and then let it go. They had no idea I'd been discreetly maintaining their firewall safeguards, software updates, and encrypted backups through my company. They didn't realize the domain was registered in my name. I deactivated the software license. I sent a notice through their administrative dashboard. The system's pro-gratis maintenance has been discontinued with immediate effect. Please contact your new IT provider to ensure service continuity. I signed out. I waited. 30 minutes later, the number of voicemails doubled. By morning, my uncle's clinic, which also uses my company's legacy infrastructure, had called my personal line in a panic. The system was offline. They were unable to access patient records. Billing software was down. Everything that kept their business running was quietly backed by me. I did not sabotage it. I did not crash it. I just removed the support. The digital scaffolding failed because they never created one of their own. My cousin Tessa texted me that afternoon. "Did you actually pull everything?" I said, "I pulled myself." The remainder collapsed on its own. She didn't ask any other questions. Instead, she made a call. We spoke for the first time in a year. She confirmed what I had suspected. My parents had tried to distort the narrative, claiming I had gone rogue, that I was mentally unwell, I was jealous, classic. Tessa, however, did not buy it this time. She was not alone. I forwarded copies of the material to the family members who were important, not out of spite, but because of precision. I did not write an editorial. I submitted audit logs, payment records, and screenshots of my name and the system architecture. I've attached a quick note. I just want you to understand the reality. There's no need to respond. That night, my father texted again. "You've made your point. Enough for now." However, it was not about making a point. It was about breaking the cycle. I revoked access to the family storage facility, which I had secretly paid for the previous 3 years. That housed my father's vintage tools and all of the seasonal decorations they enjoy displaying. Lease was canceled. The locks have changed. I called the mortgage company next. I removed myself as a co-signer for their refinance. The representative paused the call. "Do you understand that this will most likely result in a foreclosure review?" She inquired carefully. I understood. "I have confirmed the removal." 3 hours later, my mother texted. The mortgage company phoned. "Fix it." Fix. Always that term. I didn't respond. I transferred all leftover funds from the shared emergency account to a new trust that is secured, protected, and only available to me. The text grew frenzied. "My sister. You are overreacting." My mother. "Family is all you have." I looked at the last one for a minute. Then I wrote back. "I had a family. I'm not in it anymore." I turned off my phone. The next day, I contacted my lawyer to begin the process of officially separating from their company organizations. I didn't even want residual liabilities. I didn't want anything that would link me to their failing infrastructure. My lawyer, who has always been thorough, halted. "Do you want to send them a formal notice of severance?" he asked. "No," I replied. "Allow them to feel the silence. Allow them to feel what it's like when the scaffolding disappears and the person they built their system on simply goes away." The calls went unanswered. When the passwords did not work. When the safety net was removed. And for the first time, I did not feel guilty. Not to walk away. Not for allowing the structure to collapse. Not for finally getting free from under the weight they forced me to carry. They did not lose their son that day. They have lost their system. And I was not reinstalling it. I awoke to my phone vibrating non-stop, not dozens or hundreds of phone calls, texts, and voicemails stacking up. All from folks I grew up to call family. They were in panic mode, and every communication felt like a bullet. Mom's message, all uppercase without punctuation. "What have you done? We are suffering. Please fix this before it gets worse." Dad's voicemail was a rant. "You are ungrateful for what I have done. I hope it was worthwhile." He left it on repeat. Sister's group SMS to relatives. "He's being irrational. He took a step back from all support. Do not trust him." It was marked urgent and had 12 blue check marks. They figured if they screamed loud enough, someone would break. However, silence is the loudest accusation. And I had mastered it. That morning, I read this sequence. My sister sent me pressuring text messages. Stop it or I'll go public with private information. Legal threats. My parents' lawyers are demanding that services be reinstated and trust transfers be retracted. Emotional appeals. Your nieces are afraid. We're in deep. We need our home back. Everything I expected. Predictable. Systematic. Nonetheless, they all originated from the same place. Dread. Fear of being held accountable. Fear of losing what they had taken for granted. I did not respond. I did not engage in an argument. I observed. An hour later, my lawyer forwarded the official cease and desist letter from my sister's attorney, demanding that I stop disrupting services or face injunction and unspecified repercussions. He continued, "They will sue if necessary." My lawyer's note was calm. "They may file. Let us see if they do. Your acts were lawful, recorded, and justifiable." I leaned back. Heart is steady. The storm has begun. However, storms eventually run out of thunder. By mid-afternoon, the family had rallied allies. Uncle Marvin, their banking pal, texted, "You know legal fees will bankrupt them. Think twice." Nora shared vague family values postings on Facebook, insinuating that I was toxic, selfish, and immature. They were all nervous. They tried to play the victim. They banded together. But I'd already provided the documentation. I uploaded a secure version of the audit logs and transcripts to a secret legal Dropbox, which is only accessible to a neutral lawyer. Each transaction, every account gets reviewed. Each email thread, transparent logging, time-stamped, ready for discovery. Then the media began. Well, not the media, but rumors. Family acquaintances have contacted me for information. Friends informed me that they had received forwarded versions of our group chats. My universe broadened to include their talk. That evening, I witnessed the crescendo. Mom's lawyer sent an email, demanding an injunction, emergency compliance, money damages. Dad's precisely worded letter claimed mental pain, reputational damage, and a breach of trust. They placed the entire blame on me. They clothed it in love. "We merely did this to get her started. We never intended to harm you." Classic spin. Their version, "We gave the money." He exposed us to cold blood. Their pressure was increasing, but below it was ridiculous. They broke into my safe. They took my money, cut me off, and accused me of rebelling. I had a look at the inbox, which was packed with demands. Then I sent everything to my lawyer and responded, "Under review. My next steps will be directed by counsel. Until then, I stand solid on my decision. The infrastructure is down. The trust is gone. I did not provide a signature. I did not soften the tone, because there was no more room for warmth." Later that night, my sister texted again. "If you truly cared about this family, you would not resort to legal measures. You'd simply give back." I halted. I typed, "I gave everything. You've taken it twice. Hit the send button." Then it was quiet. Not the electrifying, foreboding stillness of danger. However, where connection once was, there is now an absolute, deafening nothingness. Their voices faded. Their systems remained inert. Their defenses began to deteriorate. But more crucially, they understood I would not go back to the old rules. They had written the regulations without asking me. Christmas lights were unplugged in the basement. Cameras are offline. Shared drives are inaccessible. Checking my phone. There was no call. There's no text. There is no pleading left unseen. Because the source of this storm was not anger. It was the result. They developed a system. I untangled it. And now they face the fallout, without even understanding how to construct a new framework without me. They approached my door as if they were arriving for a truce. All three of them, my mother, father, and sister, standing on the porch, dressed in anguish. Not dressed for battle, not dressed to apologize, just polished, practiced. Rena opened the door. She didn't invite them inside. She just said, "You can stand there." I remained seated. I could hear my mother's voice cracking before she began speaking. "We didn't come to fight. We just want to talk." Rena stood away, allowing the words to hang in the air like smoke from a fire that had already consumed the house. I looked up. Finally, they stood. Dad talked first. "You look tired, son." I didn't respond. Mom took control, practiced, and trembled. "We've made mistakes. It was never supposed to go this far. You cut everything off. You didn't have to make it so final." Then she added the line that they'd all been working toward. "We need you." There it was. "Now we miss you. Now we're sorry. Just what you need." As if I were still a utility, a feature, a fix. I took a step forward, Rena still standing by me. "You don't need me. You need what I gave you. And that's gone." Dad's voice became harsh. "This family falls apart without you." "That's not a family," I responded. "That's a business model." Sister stepped forward, enraged. "So you're just going to throw everything away over what one bad night?" I laughed once, short, cold. "This wasn't one night. It was 2 decades. You regarded me as if I were a backup, infrastructure, or a fuse that could be reset at any time. But the power has been cut." Mom's voice broke into genuine tears. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We were overwhelmed. We didn't know how much you did." I stared at her. That line "we didn't expect" struck like a slap. "You didn't ask because you didn't care. It worked. That was enough." Dad tried again, this time quietly. "You're our son. We raised you. You owe us some humanity." "No," I replied. "You raised me to believe I owed you everything. You spent it. It's gone." Silence. The wind blew stronger now. It was frigid, sharp, like the truth. I took a step closer so they could hear every word. "I didn't walk away because of money. I walked away because you never saw just what I could provide." Finally, I looked at my sister. "You didn't just lose the perks. You lost connection." Then I examined all of them. "You were not unkind. You simply did not notice me. And I'm done paying for it." Rena slowly closed the door behind them. They did not knock again. I stood in solitude. For the first time, it did not feel empty. It felt clean, clear, final. They did not cry as they went. They did not beg. They merely stood there shocked because they recognized something they didn't expect. I could leave. That I would not return. That I meant it. I flew halfway across the world to meet my online girlfriend after a year of daily chats, but she panicked and left me alone most of the trip. After a year of daily phone chats, I took a plane overseas to see my internet girlfriend. However, she suffered from panic episodes when we first met, forcing me to spend hours every day by myself in my hotel, until I was forced to leave. Since I honestly don't know what to think anymore, I, 29 male, need to get this off my chest. For backstory, I met this girl, 29 female, a few years ago in a Discord server where we both played a game thanks to some online pals. We immediately clicked since we had similar hobbies and senses of humor, and I was astonished by her professional ambition. She is quite passionate about her work, which is tech-related. I don't want to be too specific. And she is constantly discussing projects and other relevant topics. We increased the frequency of our conversations, and eventually we were chatting for hours every day. We occasionally had phone chats with other people, but once everyone else left, we would continue to talk until around 3 in the morning. To be honest, it didn't feel like the previous internet connections I had. One evening, when discussing films we enjoyed, we discovered that our tastes were nearly the same. We began using one of those sync services to watch content together. When she informed me she had feelings for me early last year, everything changed. She kind of blurted it out when we were on a video conversation, saying she had been feeling that way for some time but was afraid to speak because of the distance. We had been flirting a little, so I wasn't entirely shocked when I informed her that I was also intrigued. Our internet time together increased even further. Sometimes she would even hold her phone up so we could communicate digitally while she was cooking or doing anything else. Before deeming us official, I ought to have been more explicit about what I required, but I was in the heat of the moment. Even through a screen, there seemed to be a very unique vibe between us that is difficult to describe. To be honest, I hadn't connected with someone like that in a long time. Where I live, I've had a very blank dating life. It wasn't long before she began calling me her boyfriend in conversations with others close to her. She would tell me stories about how her mother would inquire about me, or how she would bring me up to her coworkers. Examples such as, "My boyfriend said the funniest thing today," or, "My boyfriend and I are going to see this movie this weekend." These statements were flattering, but I always believed that we needed to meet in person before formally committing to a relationship. However, it was definitely a mistake on my part that I never really corrected her. I suppose I assumed we would meet soon enough, and didn't want to offend her. We discussed getting together several times. She takes medication for a chronic health condition, and has rather severe anxiety difficulties. Although it makes traveling difficult, it doesn't truly affect her day-to-day existence. We decided that seeing her in Canada would be more sensible for me than having her visit the United States. Additionally, it's not exactly stress-free to cross the border with all the political outgrass going on right now. I won't get into politics here, but it's true that crossing borders is more difficult these days. I made the bold decision to plan a trip to see her around Christmas. Flights and a hotel cost far more than I should have, but I thought it would be worth it. Due to the short notice, the flights alone cost over $700, and the accommodation for 3 nights cost an additional $600. To be honest, I could hardly afford it. However, I had been saving for some time and felt that this was crucial. After all this time of communicating, I was rather eager to finally see her in person. In the days before the trip, we discussed it virtually daily. She also appeared excited. However, she admitted to being anxious about her nervousness getting the better of her. When we first met, she informed me she had been discussing anxiety management techniques with her therapist. That gave me hope that she was making preparations to ensure the visit would be successful. She even compiled a list of the locations in her city that she wished to show me. I had every reason to believe she was as excited about this as I was, as we discussed visiting a museum she loves, and a few places she thought I might enjoy. I just got back from that trip this past weekend, and I'm still getting used to it. Actually, I've spent the majority of my frigging time here in my hotel room, where I'm composing this. I flew all this way to see the city, but I have hardly seen it yet. The trip got off to a rough start. After landing, I took a 40-minute Uber to my hotel, which cost about $60 because, of course, everything in this place is pricey. I was anxious as well. I've only visited Canada a few times. I've never been to this city, and I was going to meet someone I'd only ever seen on a screen. The entire Uber ride made me feel nauseous. She was replying to my constant texts with updates on my whereabouts, but they came out as hurried and tense. Since I was also anxious, I assumed she must be experiencing even more worry, so I made an effort to be understanding. I assumed she would be prepared to meet when I arrived at the hotel. She lives about 5 minutes away from my lodging. Even though that hotel was more expensive than others, that was one of the reasons I chose it. She had said that staying nearby would make things easier for her. I messaged her to let her know I was ready anytime she was, checked in, and showered a little. I waited after that. She texted me instead of coming over, stating she needed more time since her anxiety was so bad. I made an effort to be sympathetic. I was aware of the seriousness of her concern. However, it took her an additional 2 hours to summon the bravery to visit me. I was sitting in my hotel room, checking the window every now and again, wondering if this whole trip had been a mistake. I attempted to watch TV, but I was unable to concentrate. At one point, my flight had been so early that I nearly fell asleep. She was actually trembling and crying, like sobbing, when she eventually arrived. It felt weird at first when I went down to the lobby to meet her. I sensed her trembling as we hugged. The fact that everyone in the foyer was staring at us added to the unease. She nodded when I proposed that we head up to my room so she could relax in peace. She sobbed for about 10 minutes straight while sitting on the edge of the bed in my room. Other than sitting next to her and giving her the occasional pat back, I had no idea what to do. She nodded when I asked if she wanted any water, so I retrieved some from the bathroom sink. She apologized perhaps 20 times after appearing to cool down a little. She insisted that she had been all right until she really had to come meet me, and that she had no idea why she was feeling so nervous. After a while, she appeared to be well enough for us to speak. At first it was awkward, not at all like our casual online chats, but after a half hour or so, she proposed that we visit her. There, she claimed, I would be able to meet her brother, and she would feel more at ease. She and her brother reside in a modest home approximately 5 minutes' drive from my hotel. Her brother appeared to be a cool, amiable, gaming kind of guy. They also have a very adorable black cat who insisted on attempting to sit on my lap. As I had anticipated from our video talks, their apartment was tidy, yet lived in. Even though we spent some time hanging out at their apartment, she remained really nervous the entire time. Sometimes she would get silent, and I would catch her staring at nothing, as if she were deep in meditation. Her brother made an effort to assist by carrying on the discussion and inquiring about my flight, job, and other matters. Although it was kind of him, I became aware that I was speaking to him more than to her. She stated she was too anxious to drive, but she did say she wanted to take me around and show me parts of the city. She stated she was feeling too overwhelmed, and that perhaps tomorrow would be a better time. But I did suggest that perhaps we should all go, with her brother driving. She simply phoned me by Uber to return to my hotel at the end. Total time spent together on the first day, no more than 3 or 4 hours. She spent the majority of that time there with her brother as well. Around 9 o'clock, I returned to my hotel room and just collapsed. I was worn out after the day's emotional roller coaster and the journey. In addition, I had been awake since around 4 a.m. for my journey. She replied, "Sleep well. Sorry today was rough. Tomorrow will be better, I promise." I tried to concentrate on that promise as I drifted off to sleep after sending her a good night text. I got up really early the following day. I don't know, jet lag or whatever. I had nothing to do at around 7 in the morning. She normally sleeps in because she works nights, but I was just waiting to hear from her while I sat in my hotel. Despite my hunger, I didn't want to go too far for fear of receiving a message from her. In the end, I ate a terrible and expensive breakfast at the hotel restaurant. I just waited and waited after that. I took a shower, watched TV, browsed social media, and made a quick call to my mother. She eventually messages me 4 hours later to let me know that she's awake but not quite ready to see me, because she's still feeling nervous. She said that she simply needed some time when I asked if there was anything I could do to help. I thought there might be less pressure if we met in a public place rather than her coming to the hotel. "Maybe," she responded, "but I'm not sure yet." Said she would notify me shortly. I tried not to show my frustration at this point, but I was becoming rather annoyed. In order to have something to do, I decided to pick up some items from the drugstore that was within walking distance. I bought some Tylenol because I was about to have a headache, some food, and a portable toothbrush because I had forgotten mine. I was mostly simply passing the time. I discovered a small lunch area close by after spending far more time than was required exploring the pharmacy. Perhaps bringing her something to eat would be a kind gesture, so I thought I could get lunch for the two of us. After getting sandwiches for the two of us, I returned to the hotel to leave my belongings before visiting her. I messaged her to let her know that I had gone to get lunch and to ask if I could come over right now. After 15 minutes or so, she responded, "Sure, I could come over." I took the food to her apartment after calling an Uber. We were about halfway through day 2 when I eventually arrived at her apartment, which was approximately 2 hours later, and she hadn't even eaten the food I had brought. She thanked me for thinking of her, but claimed she wasn't hungry. I made an effort to hide my dismay. At least it wasn't wasted because her brother took the second sandwich. We spent some time sitting in their living room chit-chatting. She appeared slightly less nervous than she had been the day before, but not entirely at ease. She tells me that she, her brother, and I are going to a get-together with a number of their friends, just as I was beginning to believe that perhaps we could actually do something together. I came all this way to spend time with her, so I was a little taken aback, but I reasoned that maybe having other people there might make her feel more at ease. She replied that we would only be there for a few hours when I questioned how long. She replied that it was at her friend's house, which is a bit outside of the city, when I inquired where it was. I was disappointed, even though I attempted to appear excited about it. I had not anticipated our first actual day together looking like this. The drive there took roughly an hour in the end. I sat in the rear and she sat in the passenger seat while her brother drove. For most of the ride, they discussed people I didn't know and inside jokes that I wasn't involved in. She would sometimes attempt to explain things to me, but it was never the same. I primarily just took in the vista outside the window, which was rather pleasant. There were about 10 people at her friend's house when we arrived. In fact, all of her friends were incredibly kind and hospitable. They were all aware of me. She had apparently been discussing this visit for weeks. She introduced me to everyone as her boyfriend, and it felt perfectly acceptable. It was a good celebration. Good food, a few beverages, and people playing board and video games. Everyone was polite and constantly approached me to chat. After hearing so much about me, a number of individuals expressed their happiness at finally meeting me. According to one female, "She never shuts up about you," which, considering how little time we'd really spent together since I came, was both flattering and perplexing. Although we didn't really converse much, we stayed there for the majority of the night. She was off playing games with someone else or dragging me into discussions with her pals all the time. It was strange. We were usually in different areas of the room, despite my repeated attempts to stand close to her or get her attention. At 10 o'clock at night, we finally began to return. Given that she typically stays up until 3 or 4 in the morning, I assumed we would still have plenty of time to spend together. Perhaps we could just sit and chat like we used to do online, or we could watch one of those movies we were always discussing. She then asks her brother in the car if she can drive me to my hotel before they leave for home. According to her brother, "Sure." I'm sitting there in disbelief. She just met her boyfriend in person, who went across the country to see her, but she's too exhausted to spend any real time with him. When she glanced back at me for confirmation, I said, "Sure, that's fine," because I had no idea what else to say. Most of the drive back to my motel was quiet. She mentioned her anxiousness had been playing up more than usual lately, and once apologized for being so strange. It wasn't actually okay, but I told her it was. Could I say anything else? I couldn't really make her want to hang out with me. She said goodbye with a short hug and promised to text me in the morning when we arrived at my hotel. I felt completely whack when I went up to my room. After another few hours of hardly communicating on day 2, I began to believe that this entire vacation had been a huge mistake. Thus I find myself back in the hotel room, completely bewildered and alone. Even though my girlfriend is only a few minutes away, I'm alone in a strange country, and haven't really spent any time with her alone. I attempted to watch a movie on my laptop but was unable to concentrate. I ended up aimlessly browsing social media until around 1 in the morning. I was concerned that texting her about it might exacerbate her worry, so I refrained from doing so. However, I was also at a loss about what to do. I felt like I had met everyone in her life except for my real girlfriend by the time I was scheduled to have dinner with her family the following evening. I eventually texted her to let her know how I was feeling. I tried to be straightforward but gentle. I acknowledged that worry was difficult, but I was disappointed that we hadn't been able to spend more time together. I brought up the fact that I had come all this way to visit her, and that it bothered me that she seemed more at ease with me in public than with me alone. I made it clear that I was merely perplexed and a little depressed about the circumstance, not angry with her. When she finally reacted, it was a wall of text and took over 20 minutes. She apologized profusely, stating that she wanted to make the trip worthwhile for me, but was simply too exhausted, and that her anxiety was still through the sky. She made an effort to reassure me that she still had a strong interest in me, but she claimed that she is too anxious, and that nothing would happen if we were by ourselves. It seems that this is difficult for her because she hasn't been in a relationship for a few years. She clarified that when there are other people present, she feels more at ease since she is not under as much pressure to be fascinating or amusing. Claimed that she is constantly concerned that I am evaluating her or contrasting her with her online persona. She added that she fears physical contact after a long period of time and worries that I have unrealistic expectations for her. I informed her that there are several steps between an embrace and anything more serious, and that I wasn't anticipating anything intimate or physical. In fact, I haven't even given her a hug this trip. I simply wanted to talk to you and hang out with you like we do online for some real quality time. I told her that I wasn't traveling this far for sex. I finally got to meet the person I've been corresponding with for months. That appeared to relieve her, and she said that after meeting her mother, we would spend some time together. She mentioned that her mother was very excited to see me and that perhaps we could return to my hotel to watch a movie or something after supper. I accepted the plan since it seemed better than nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. I continued to reflect on the entire circumstance and question whether I had made a grave error in interacting with someone who suffered from such extreme anxiety. That seems harsh, and I don't blame her for having mental health problems. That's not her fault. But I began to question if I could handle the difficulties of a long-distance relationship. My last day here is today. Tomorrow morning I will depart early. This entire trip has seemed like a huge waste of both money and effort. Instead of spending most of my visit sitting by myself in a hotel room, I wanted to spend time with her. Since we don't have much time together, I genuinely assumed she would want to spend every moment with me. We've been discussing this vacation for a while, so I thought it would be rather different. After this, I'm not sure if this relationship can last. Am I going overboard? I understand that anxiety does exist, yet it seems pointless that I've come this far. Update. Several days have passed since my return, and because many people have been inquiring about what transpired, I thought I should provide an update. In the comments, several of you were really critical. Yes, I am aware that anxiety is a real illness. I am not a sex-crazed guy who was merely attempting to hook up. Furthermore, I don't believe she was taking advantage of me or anything similar. You folks come up with some crazy hypotheses. For those who are wondering why I didn't just go explore the city by myself, the answer is that I did some exploring, but it wasn't the main goal. I wasn't a tourist who traveled so far. To spend time with her, I went. In any case, I made the initial post on the last day of the trip after waking up quite early. After that, I anxiously awaited her message. Once more, I didn't hear from her for a few hours. When she did text, it was a bit after noon. I had been up since about 8 o'clock, so I spent an additional 4 hours sitting in my hotel room, checking my phone like a teen in love every few minutes. She said I could take an Uber to her apartment at any time, and reminded me that we had supper with her mother later that day. Many of you advised me to simply call off the dinner plans, but I chose to go ahead and see how things worked out. I mean, I might as well meet her mother since I'd already traveled this far. I quickly showered, changed into my clothes, and went to her house. After the previous days, I was a little nervous, but I tried to remain optimistic. It was a pleasant difference that her brother was out when I arrived. Although she still appeared a little anxious, she was unquestionably less anxious than before. In fact, we watched things together for a while. We sat side by side on her couch after she recommended the show she had been eager to see with me. We sat close, and it felt more like the quality time I had been hoping for, because she looked to be having a better day in terms of anxiety. It was pleasant that she even leaned slightly against me. We didn't actually engage in any physical activity. After some time, her brother returned home, although it was unquestionably better than the days before. She told me more about her friend's remarks about us at the party, and we discussed some of them. It sounded more like our internet chats. We began preparing to go have dinner with her mother at around 5 o'clock. This caused me some anxiety. It's usually a huge deal to meet the parents, and I wasn't sure what to anticipate considering how the journey had gone so far. I could sense that she was agitated once more as she drove us to the restaurant. I made an effort to divert her attention by keeping the conversation light. It was a charming, tiny Italian restaurant. When we got there, her mother was already there. As soon as she noticed us, she got up and hugged her daughter before turning to grin warmly at me. They have the same eyes, so I could tell right away where my girlfriend acquired her appearance. Her mother's dinner went unexpectedly well. Her mother was approachable and inquired about my work and family without being overbearing. Her mother looked sincere in her excitement about me and her daughter being together, and we clicked immediately. My partner appeared more at ease throughout dinner than I had observed throughout the entire trip. She was grinning, contributing to the discussion, and even putting her hand on my arm to emphasize a point. When we left, her mother hugged me, which was wonderful, and said I could come over at any moment. Even though I wasn't sure whether there would be another time at that moment, it felt good. We returned to her apartment after dinner. Although her brother was present, it felt more private because he tended to stay in his room. It was much the same as before. Hanging out, talking, and watching things. It felt more one-on-one than before, yet it wasn't quite alone time. Was this trip's final day what I had anticipated? Not at all. However, it was unquestionably superior to the initial days. She offered to drive me back herself, which surprised me because I was half expecting her to call me an Uber again as the evening wore on. It seemed like a minor triumph. We discussed the trip on the way back. I made an effort to be understanding when she apologized once more for the way things had gone. She acknowledged that I wished we had more time, like today, and suggested that since the first meeting was over, perhaps next time would be simpler. She accompanied me to my room when we arrived at my hotel. She assisted me in making sure I hadn't left anything in the bathroom or drawers when I was packing for the early departure. Despite its simplicity, it had an intimate feel that most of the tour had not. We kissed goodbye as she was ready to go. Just a good kiss goodbye. Nothing fancy. No makeout. It was short but sweet, and it got me thinking about what the journey may have been like if we had arrived at that moment sooner. After she went, we exchanged a few texts. She stated she wished we'd spent more time together, and I was getting ready for bed because my flight was so early. She said that although she had purchased a frame for a photograph of us, she had come to the realization that we hadn't really taken any quality group photos. The handful we had from the weekend didn't really fit her needs because they were primarily group photos from the party. That really disappointed me. So I suggested that perhaps I should simply take an Uber back, so I could get a decent photo. After 10 minutes or so without hearing back, I assumed she had either fallen asleep or became distracted. Then she texted me out of the blue to tell me to come downstairs. She explained that she had driven all the way back to the hotel. Anxiety be damned, she said. Just to take a picture and kiss me goodbye. At first I didn't understand. She was indeed in the lobby as I rushed downstairs. In addition to taking selfies, we also asked the night cashier to take a few group photos. Then we kissed again, more deeply this time. She gave me a tight hug and said in a whisper that she was happy I came, but that the weekend wasn't what we had expected. Of the entire visit, that particular moment at the conclusion felt the most genuine and connected. I got up really early the following morning in preparation for my journey. Shortly after returning home, she must have texted me to wish me a safe journey. The return trip went well, giving us plenty of time to reflect about what had transpired and what it meant for us moving forward. Overall, I'm going to maintain my optimism, even though it wasn't the ideal weekend I had hoped for. I believe that the decision to shorten the vacation was probably a mistake. Given her anxiety, I flew halfway across the world to meet my online girlfriend after a year of daily chats, but she panicked and left me alone most of the trip. After a year of daily phone chats, I took a plane overseas to see my internet girlfriend. However, she suffered from panic episodes when we first met, forcing me to spend hours every day by myself in my hotel, until I was forced to leave. Since I honestly don't know what to think anymore, I, 29 male, need to get this off my chest. For backstory, I met this girl, 29 female, a few years ago in a Discord server where we both played a game thanks to some online pals. We immediately clicked since we had similar hobbies and senses of humor, and I was astonished by her professional ambition. She is quite passionate about her work, which is tech-related. I don't want to be too specific. And she is constantly discussing projects and other relevant topics. We increased the frequency of our conversations, and eventually we were chatting for hours every day. We occasionally had phone chats with other people, but once everyone else left, we would continue to talk until around 3 in the morning. To be honest, it didn't feel like the previous internet connections I had. One evening, when discussing films we enjoyed, we discovered that our tastes were nearly the same. We began using one of those sync services to watch content together. When she informed me she had feelings for me early last year, everything changed. She kind of blurted it out when we were on a video conversation, saying she had been feeling that way for some time but was afraid to speak because of the distance. We had been flirting a little, so I wasn't entirely shocked when I informed her that I was also intrigued. Our internet time together increased even further. Sometimes she would even hold her phone up so we could communicate digitally while she was cooking or doing anything else. Before deeming us official, I ought to have been more explicit about what I required, but I was in the heat of the moment. Even through a screen, there seemed to be My parents tried to give my inheritance to their golden daughter, but my grandparents had a surprising twist in store. My parents, especially my dad, have always favored my 26-year-old younger sister Amy over me. This predilection began in our early years and only grew worse as we matured. From my earliest recollections, Amy was the golden child. When I was 5 and she was 2, our parents threw her a lavish birthday party that included a bouncy castle, a petting zoo, and professional face painters. That same year, I celebrated my birthday with a small family dinner and a store-bought cake. This contributed to setting the tone for the ensuing years. As we grew older, the distinctions became more obvious. Amy consistently got the best clothes, the newest gadgets, and the most attention. When I was 10 years old, I remember setting aside months' worth of allowance for a new bike. Amy threw a fit when she saw it because she wanted one too. Instead of teaching her to save her weight, my parents went ahead and bought her a bike that was even better than mine. School was another setting where the bias was apparent. Amy's parents typically missed my school events, but they were at all of hers. In 4th grade, I played the lead in the school play. I was so excited that I practiced for weeks. On the night of the play, my parents were an hour late, so they missed my big scene. Amy complained of a stomachache, so they were comforting her. Later on, she was okay. They had just lost track of time while playing with her. Nothing I ever seemed to do seemed adequate in terms of academics. In middle school, I frequently earned consecutive A's, joined the math club, and even won first place in a regional science fair. My parents barely recognized these accomplishments, but when Amy received a B+ on one test in her weakest subject, they celebrated with a supper and bought her a new phone to encourage her to keep improving. High school in particular was challenging. I engaged in whatever activity I could with the goal of winning their approval. In addition to maintaining a 4.0 GPA, I was the debate team captain and editor of the school newspaper. Amy breezed through school, just maintaining a C average, and she spent a lot of time with her friends. I was selected as one of 2 junior year applicants from our university to take part in a renowned Harvard summer program. I felt wonderful, and it was such an honor. When I broke the news to my dad over dinner, he complained and shifted the conversation to Amy's upcoming dance performance. "That's nice," my mother said, "at least," but she quickly went on. When Amy's concert fell on the day I was leaving Harvard, my parents wanted to see her sing, but they were unable to take me to the airport. I requested a lift from a friend's parents. The process of applying to colleges was another excruciating one. I spent months honing my essays, participating in extracurricular activities, and studying for the SAT. I was accepted to a number of prestigious universities and awarded a substantial scholarship to attend the university of my choice. My parents' response to this, when I brought it up to them over dinner, was hardly bearable. "That's good, but don't let it run to your head. College isn't everything," suggested my dad. My mother added, "Just keep us in mind when you're off becoming a big shot." However, when Amy barely made it through high school and decided against going to college, my parents were very accommodating. They respected her for knowing herself, and for not conforming to social norms. They even bought her a car as a graduation present, which is something they have never done for me. I suffered emotionally as a result of this ongoing partiality. I struggled with anxiety and hopelessness throughout my teens and early 20s. I realized that my parents' behavior was not my fault when I started therapy in college. It took me years to build my self-esteem and learn how to validate myself independently of my parents' approval. Despite the lack of support from my immediate family, I was nevertheless able to live a respectable life. I had a respectable position in finance by the time I graduated with honors from college, and by the time I was 27, I had even bought my own home. My parents aren't, but I'm proud of my achievements. The current drama, then, starts here. My grandfather passed away not too long ago on my dad's side. He was a prosperous businessman who began with nothing and left behind a large estate. According to his will, he divided his assets evenly between his children, parents, and his siblings, as well as his grandchildren, which include myself, Amy, and our cousins. I received a sizable share of the inheritance, about $500,000. It would have enabled me to make investments for the future, settle my school loans, and maybe start my own business in the future. I was pleased with this unexpected windfall and the opportunities it might bring. However, it was evident that my parents were upset when the will was read. They later pulled me aside and told me that they thought it was unfair because I was given an equal share. Amy, who works part-time at a coffee shop and lives in our parents' basement, said that she was in more need of the money because she was in pain. I tried to remain composed despite my shock. I explained that they had no influence over Grandpa's decision-making process. They urged me to behave honorably and give Amy my due share. When I declined, they were furious and started accusing me of being selfish and lacking gratitude. They talked about every instance where they had assisted me that my dad could remember. He prioritized paying for my medically necessary braces, purchasing me the absolute minimum of school supplies, and letting me live at home when I was in college, even though I worked part-time to help with the money. Conveniently, he ignored the fact that they still support Amy at the age of 25, the car they provided her, and the numerous shopping sprees. The situation quickly became more serious. My dad decided to take care of matters himself, acting as the executor of the will. He said he would interpret Grandpa's intentions and give Amy my entire share in addition to her own inheritance. He claimed that if Grandpa had been aware of our particular circumstance, he would have won it. I was shattered. In addition to being clearly against the law, this served as a horrible reminder of how little my parents valued me. I attempted to reason with them by pointing out that Grandpa had always treated all of his grandchildren equally and that he was aware of our situation. My mother then accused me of disparaging the departed by suggesting that Grandpa might have liked something different from what my dad was supporting. When I brought up some recollections of Grandpa encouraging me to pursue my academic and professional ambitions, my parents dismissed them as misrepresentations. They said Grandpa had quietly expressed concern about Amy's future and wanted to make sure she was taken care of. When I questioned them why he hadn't just written the will that way back then, they didn't have an answer. Although Amy felt uncomfortable with the situation, she refrained from criticizing our parents. "Mom and Dad know best," She simply shrugged when I attempted to speak with her alone. It was clear that she would not be of much assistance. I sought advice from my paternal grandmother, Grandpa's widow, feeling deceived and hurt. She was furious when she heard what was going on. She told me that Grandpa had not intended this at all and that my parents had no power to change the will. Grandma supplied some information that makes things clear. My parents reportedly asked Grandpa to leave everything to Amy in his will a number of years ago. Grandpa had adamantly protested, stating that he believed all of his grandchildren should receive the same treatment. In his will, he had even stipulated that anyone contesting the fair distribution would forfeit their share. Armed with this information, I took my folks on. They were shocked when Grandma revealed that they had previously tried to influence the will. My dad tried to defend it by saying they were only considering Amy's future, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandmother took immediate action. She contacted her lawyer and other executors of her will. She also contacted my dad's siblings, who were just as outraged by what he was trying as she was. Together, they thwarted my dad's plot and ensured that the terms of the will would be followed. My parents are not thrilled with me, but they had to back off. They accused me of inciting the family against me and contended that I ought to have resolved this internally rather than enlisting outside help. My mother wept because I had lied to them and divided the family. When my dad threatened to completely cut me out of their will, I responded that I had never expected anything from them anyhow. They are now threatening to cut off all contact if I take the inheritance. My father even said that if I were to inherit their home, I would not be allowed to live there. My mother delivered a particularly scathing blow when she said that my taking the money shows that I never really loved them and was only eager to make money off of their death. The extended family is divided on the issue. Some of my cousins are supportive because they recognize the historical partiality and respect my self-advocacy. Some people think that since family unity comes before money, I should have given in to keep the peace. This has caused tension in both my parents and my dad's relationships, even though my dad's siblings are unquestionably on my side. Amy is caught up in all of this. She told me in private that she is not prepared to confront our parents, even though she feels horrible and didn't ask for this. I don't really blame her because she has been taught her entire life to rely on them and look for their approval. A part of me still wishes she will assist me just once. This situation has evoked a great deal of resentment and pain from the past. I find myself thinking back on all the occasions when Amy was given preference over me, including the birthday parties I missed, the school events my parents skipped, and the unreported accomplishments. It appears that a lifetime of injustice is being brought to a head by this one incident. Despite the fact that the entire situation has generated a great deal of division within the family, I am standing my position and intend to inherit what Grandpa intended. Family gatherings have become awkward, and my parents hardly ever speak to me anymore. For the first time since I could tolerate the accusing looks and chilly shoulders, I skipped our monthly family dinner last week. Despite the chaos, a small part of me feels in control. For the first time in my life, I'm facing my parents' unjust treatment. I'm stating my worth and refusing to be dismissed. It's simultaneously awful and liberating. I believe I'm correct, but I'm exhausted by the family drama. I've started having anxiety episodes again, something I haven't had since college. I am considering going back to therapy in order to help manage all of this stress. Should I have taken my inheritance and refused to live up to my parents' expectations? To keep the peace, should I have just given Amy the cash? I'm tired of being the family scapegoat, but I'm also afraid of losing my family entirely. Any advice or point of view would be greatly appreciated. Update. Much has transpired since my initial post half a year ago. I want to express my gratitude to everyone for their advice and support, which really helped me get through difficult times. Let me begin by discussing the legal side of things. I did consult my own lawyer, as many of you suggested. He confirmed that my dad's attempt was unlawful and that I was fully entitled to inherit. He assisted me in documenting everything and prepared me to respond lawfully if necessary. Luckily, that is not how things happened. My grandma and her lawyer, together with my dad's brothers, resolved their differences out of court. The will was executed just as planned, and I received my entire fortune. My dad's attempts at will manipulation resulted in his removal as an executor. This process, which took several weeks, was a little taxing. After threatening legal action, heated meetings, and irate phone calls, my parents were forced to back off since the law was clear. However, the family fallout has been notable and is still going on. My parents first reaffirmed their position. They accused me of neglecting my sister and being greedy. Additionally, they attempted to incite other family members against me by spreading claims that I had somehow forced Grandpa to give me money. Fortunately, the majority of the family was aware of their deceit. There was one particularly terrible incident at a family get-together approximately a month after the will was accepted. My aunt was entertaining and hadn't invited my parents, so they caused a commotion when they showed over without warning. As my dad began to yell that I had stolen from Amy and turned Grandma against her, my mother threw an old photo album right at my feet and said, "I ruined all these wonderful memories." It was awful and uncomfortable. It took a few family members to calm things down and convince my parents to go. My grandmother, bless her, was my strongest ally during this entire ordeal. She told stories of my grandfather, who was always proud of my accomplishments and who particularly wanted to ensure that all of his grandchildren had equal opportunities. She also claimed that Grandpa had kept a scrapbook of my achievements, including copies of my college acceptance letters, media clippings of my academic achievements, and even the program from the university play that my parents had been late for. This realization was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Additionally, Grandma offered to update the family's records. She planned a family get-together without my parents there and detailed the whole history of my parents' prejudice, including incidents I had either completely forgotten or had never heard of. It was heartbreaking to finally have someone acknowledge the injustice I had endured for years, but it also brought up old wounds. In all of this, my sister Amy finally found her voice. After considerable introspection and several lengthy conversations with our grandma, she personally came to me and apologized for not standing up for me earlier. She claimed that although she believed our parents' preference was wrong, she had been too afraid to question it. We talked extensively and passionately about our early years and how they affected us both. Being the favorite child wasn't as amazing as it seemed, Amy acknowledged. She felt a lot of pressure to meet our parents' expectations and never learned how to stand on her own 2 feet. She related stories of how she longed to do things independently, but our parents would step in and take care of everything for her, denying her the chance to grow and learn from her mistakes. This conversation was a turning point in our relationship. We started to repair the sibling bond that our parents' favoritism had severed. Through this family turmoil, the two of us have been getting together for coffee on a regular basis to talk and support one another. Everyone was shocked when she announced that she would use her inheritance to pay for education. She said she was inspired to take charge of her own life after witnessing me defend myself. She first enrolled in a local community college with the intention of transferring to a 4-year university after deciding what she wanted to study. Our parents gasped with surprise. I think they were aware that Amy had not benefited from their babying. My parents' reactions to all of this have been varied and evolving. At first, they viciously attacked us both. Since they claimed I turned Amy against them, they attempted to use guilt to get her to drop out of college in order to support the family. When that didn't work, they changed tactics. My mother started to realize how harmful their behaviors had been after having several lengthy conversations with my grandma and witnessing Amy's remarkable change. She has started therapy to deal with her issues and made some tentative attempts at reconciliation. She apologized, acknowledged that she had been unjust, and asked for an opportunity to make amends. It takes time, and although I'm cautiously optimistic, I'm also setting firm boundaries. Sadly, my dad has been less inclined to take responsibility for his faults. He feels like the victim in all of this and is still quite angry. Since Amy decided to attend college, he has been cold toward her and rarely communicates with me. He has made a few attempts to exert control over us, threatening to sell the house we grew up in if we don't change our ways or offering to forgive us if we do. It hurts to see him alienate himself from both of his children in this way, even if we are both standing strong. The extended family's dynamics have undergone a significant shift. I now reside nearer to my grandma and my dad's siblings, who have been really supportive. I feel less alone in this battle now that I've heard from my aunts and uncles about how they've dealt with my dad's difficult behavior throughout the years. I've also grown closer to some of my cousins who supported me. We can all catch up without being distracted by the drama of the older generations by starting a monthly cousin supper. I have been using my inheritance well for myself. I feel incredibly financially free now that I have paid off my student loans. I have put together a diverse investment portfolio in collaboration with a financial advisor. Additionally, I have some money saved up for the possibility of starting my own business in the future. I'm looking into starting a community center that offers affordable mental health services and courses on financial literacy. The most important use of the funds, however, has been for me to purchase therapy for myself and offer to do the same for Amy. We are both trying to move past the things that happened to us as children and are learning how to set healthy boundaries with our parents. Even though it's a long path, I already feel like I'm learning more and getting better at overcoming long-term bias and emotional neglect. My life has improved in some surprisingly positive ways as a result of this entire process. I've learned a lot about setting boundaries and protecting myself. Even though I know I made the correct decision, it hasn't always been simple, and there are still challenging days. I'm proud of myself for defying pressure and guilt. One of the most surprising outcomes has been a shift in my career path. Managing all of this family strife and going to treatment has made it easier for me to recognize my own enthusiasm for helping those suffering. Having to deal with all of this dysfunction in my family and going to therapy has made me realize how motivated I am to help people who have experienced similar family dynamics. I'm currently considering going back to school to work as a family therapist and specialize in adult children of emotionally immature parents. I've also been working at a local juvenile facility, where I've been helping kids from difficult family situations. It is incredibly fulfilling to be able to provide the kind of support and encouragement I wish I had received as a child. I'm even thinking of spending some of my fortune to start a scholarship fund for kids in similar situations. My communication with Amy has continued to improve. Every month, we celebrate Siblings Day by doing something fun for the two of us. Last month's hike and lunch was the most relaxed and intimate we've experienced since we were young kids. We are slowly reestablishing our relationship on our own terms, free from the influence of our parents. Things with my parents are still difficult. My mom has been working to mend our connection. She has been going to therapy on a regular basis and has even started to see some of the harm caused by her bias. During a few one-on-one lunches, we have discussed our past and future goals in an open and difficult manner. It's not perfect, but there has been progress. But my dad is still against change. He continues to claim that he did nothing wrong and that Amy and I should be grateful. He skipped a number of family events since he won't be in the same room as me. I'm attempting to let go of my need to force him to change his perspective or regulate his responses, even though it hurts. Grandma has become a rock for Amy and me. She has also been telling us more stories about our grandfather, who was proud of us for standing up for ourselves. She has been an excellent mediator in family disputes because she consistently advocates for fairness and understanding. Many lessons on the true meaning of family have been taught during the entire process. I've realized that sometimes the family you choose may be more supportive than the one you grew up in. I have become closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who supported me over this trip, in addition to creating a close-knit group of friends who have been very beneficial. I've also grown to realize how important it is to set boundaries and take care of myself. I'm getting better at saying no to situations that endanger my mental health, and I no longer feel guilty about prioritizing my own well-being. I had always put off exploring new interests and hobbies because I was so focused on trying to win my parents' approval. I would like to advise people in similar situations to not allow anyone to make them feel guilty about obtaining what is rightfully theirs. It's fair to protect yourself, even if it causes controversy. Despite the complexity of family dynamics, you deserve to be treated fairly. Never forget that it's never too late to start living the life you deserve. If required, seek therapy. Surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to set boundaries. Your value is determined by who you are, not by how your family treats you. Again, I want to thank all of you for your encouragement and suggestions. It meant more than you would have realized during a really difficult time. Even though the path has not been easy, I am looking forward to the future and feel a level of confidence that I have not had in years. I'm eager to see where this new phase of my life will take me, and I'm determined to break the pattern of partiality and improve the connections in my own future family. I came back from a business trip to find my sister and her kids in my apartment. When I asked them to leave, My whole family criticized me. Hello everyone. The tale of the day will astound you, but quickly, if you like this content, please click the subscribe button. Recently the channel has been a little quiet, but your support keeps it continuing. Let's get started. I'm a 28-year-old man who has spent the last 3 years living in my own apartment. I've always cherished my independence and personal space, and I work in software development. I went on a business trip 2 weeks ago to meet with clients all around the nation. When I departed, everything was as usual. My flat was spotless, well kept, and just the way I wanted it. After I returned, everything changed. Tired from traveling, I unlocked my door to discover my sister Sarah, 25F, and her 3 children, ages 3, 5, and 7, had moved into my house. I'm not referring to a couple bags for a quick trip. I'm referring to changed furniture, toys all over the place, kids' clothes in my spare bedroom, and food in my refrigerator that I most surely didn't purchase. I briefly believed I had entered the incorrect apartment. "Oh, you're back," my sister replied nonchalantly, as if this were absolutely normal, as she left the bathroom without even noticing me. I stood there, key still in hand, too astonished to answer. "Mom said you'd be home today." As I tried to comprehend what was occurring, the children ran over, thrilled to see their Uncle James. My private area, my apartment, had been totally overrun. When I eventually managed to speak, I questioned, "What the hell is going on?" Sarah clarified that she needed a temporary place to stay because she had been experiencing problems with her landlord. She apparently got permission from her parents to use my flat while I was abroad. She went on, "They said you wouldn't mind," as though that resolved the issue. I was enraged. I hadn't received a call. No one had sent a text. No one had considered asking the renter if it was acceptable to transfer a whole family into his unit. I called my parents right away, and I was even more irate after hearing their response. "Oh, James, I'm glad Sarah found a place to stay." My mom's landlord was being utterly irrational. My dad called me and told me that I was being self-centered, and that family helps family when I brought up the fact that they had allowed my sister to enter my apartment without my consent. He reminded me that helping my sister wouldn't kill me, and that I had all that extra room. I clarified that I pay a lot of money for my flat, because I want privacy. When I'm not traveling, I work from home, and having 3 children would make it impossible. In addition, my lease expressly forbids having long-term visitors without informing management. "Well, she's already settled in," was their reply. "You can't simply throw her out." I can, in fact. They treated me as like I was the irrational one for demanding my personal space back, even though it's my apartment. The children have been informed by Sarah that they will be staying with me for some time, and she didn't give me a direct response when I asked her what that meant. She replied she's researching her choices but hasn't taken any firm action when I questioned her about her plans to find a new location. Sarah and the kids have taken up my bedroom and the spare room, so I'm currently sleeping on my own couch. Now my neatly arranged apartment is in disarray. Everywhere you look you can find toys. I have no privacy, and the kids are noisy from the early hours of the morning till evening. I've given Sarah a week to come up with a different plan. I don't understand how it's reasonable to ask me to give up the apartment I pay for without even consulting my parents. Yet they think I'm being unkind. Am I being self-centered here? How can I regain my privacy without causing a family emergency? Update: the key that was not permitted. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who supported and commented on my first post. It made me feel less insane for being angry about this circumstance. Since my last post, things have become worse. I spoke with Sarah directly after several of you recommended that I find out how she entered my flat in the first place. She didn't break in, it turns out. She received a key from my parents. Yes, it is what you read. My parents reportedly chose to give my sister the extra key to my apartment, which they kept for emergencies only, without telling me. They responded angrily when I confronted them about this. My mother remarked, "We knew you'd make a big deal out of it." My father dismissed my worries, saying I was overreacting and that it's not like anything bad happened. Sarah needed help and you were away. What were we supposed to do? Let her and the kids be homeless? I pointed out that there were plenty of other options, that they could have let her stay with them, helped her find temporary housing, or at the very least called me to ask permission before letting her into my home. However, things have happened. I've been cleaning my apartment and found a number of missing or damaged items, along with a broken set of expensive noise-canceling headphones, stains on my couch that weren't there before, a signed baseball I had on display in a case, and my PlayStation and 3 games. Someone used markers to draw on my bedroom wall, and when I questioned Sarah about it, she became defensive, saying that she had no idea what the PlayStation or baseball were about, that the headphones were probably already broken, and that the stains and the wall artwork were just children being kids. My costly sheets, which I specifically purchased because they help me sleep better, are stained with what appears to be juice or Kool-Aid. Sarah's response: "They'll wash out. Stop being so materialistic. This is more than just a privacy invasion." I later found out that the kids had been sleeping in my bed while I was away. Now it's about respecting my property and boundaries. I've told Sarah that the 1-week deadline still applies. I've made it clear to my parents that they will never again have access to my apartment, and I've changed the locks, which I paid for myself, even though the landlord offered to split the cost after I explained the situation. The narrative has somehow turned into that I'm the villain in this story, because I want my own space back, and I'm upset about my possessions being damaged or missing. But I'm standing firm. This is my apartment. My parents are now giving me the silent treatment, and Sarah has been telling family members that I'm throwing her and the kids out on the street. I've offered to help Sarah find a new place and even lend her money for a security deposit, but I'm not going to back down on the deadline. These are my belongings, and I have every right to be upset about what happened. I'll provide another update at the end of the week. Update: the damage report and missing valuables. I wish I had better news to share. It's been 4 days since my last update. The PlayStation and games that went missing, Sarah lent them to her current boyfriend without asking me. The autographed baseball that was missing from its case. I've done a more comprehensive inventory of my flat, and found that the damage and missing things are worse than I first believed. When I opened the desk drawer where I keep important documents, I found a small lockbox with $500 in cash. My emergency fund was empty, and when I confronted Sarah about it, she admitted that she borrowed the money because she was short on cash and promised to reimburse me as soon as possible. However, one of the kids took it outside to play with, and it's now lost somewhere in the neighborhood park. I've taken pictures of everything and made a comprehensive list of the missing and damaged items totaling almost $2,000. I sent this list to Sarah and my parents, making it clear that I expect reimbursement, but they didn't provide a timeline or acknowledge the seriousness of taking money that wasn't hers. Their answers were predictable. The deadline I set is coming up, and Sarah hasn't tried to find other housing. Instead, she's intensified her efforts to make me feel bad by using the children as emotional leverage. Sarah says she doesn't have that kind of money right now, and my parents accused me of nickel and dimming my own sister during a trying time. Where are we supposed to go? The smallest of her children began to cry when she asked this question in front of them. Additionally, I now know more about her housing circumstances. Despite what my parents suggested, she was not homeless. Due to months of non-payment of rent, she was forced to leave her previous flat. This isn't an emergency, even though my parents provided financial support throughout that period. Everyone expects me to correct the cycle of recklessness that has culminated in this situation. The atmosphere in the flat has gotten even more heated. Apparently, as a form of retaliation for my insistence that the children go, Sarah has ceased cleaning up after them. Toys are all over the place, dishes are heaped in the sink, and the bathroom has been transformed into something I never would have imagined in a matter of days. I've tried setting limits by locking the door to my home office throughout the day. but the kids keep yelling for me and hammering on the door, which interrupts my business calls. Sarah doesn't try to reroute them or show any consideration for my work schedule. Sarah had earlier complained that I wasn't helping her find a boyfriend in my apartment with food. So last night things reached a climax when I got back from grabbing takeaway for myself. I'd only met this man twice, but he was sitting on my couch, sipping my beer, and behaving as though he lived there. Sarah accused me of being domineering when I protested his presence, claiming that I had no right to govern her social circle. I reminded her that I have complete control over who is allowed inside my house as the legal tenant. After a heated argument, her partner left, but not before accusing me of being true to your own blood. Other family members have now been recruited by my parents to exert pressure on me. 2 aunts, an uncle, and even my grandmother have called to remind me that family comes first and that I should be more sympathetic to Sarah's plight. I've discussed the matter with my landlord, and he's been surprisingly understanding. He acknowledged that it is against the conditions of my lease to have an undeclared residence, but he stated he would be accommodating given the situation. Even though Sarah is not listed on the lease, he has also hinted that we could have to start formal eviction procedures if she doesn't want to vacate. Though I'm praying it doesn't happen, I'm getting ready in case it does. 3 days remain till the deadline. After it passes, I'll provide another update. Update: family repercussions and eviction proceedings. As many of you anticipated, Sarah didn't try to leave or even explore for other lodging when the deadline drew near. Rather, she firmly asserted that she was aware of her rights and that I was not allowed to evict her without giving her enough notice. Despite not actually being a renter, it appears that she has been receiving counsel regarding her rights. I formally gave Sarah a written notice with 30 days to leave the property after speaking with my landlord and a friend who is a lawyer. To ensure that there would be no doubt as to whether she received it, I personally handed this to her and sent it to her via certified mail. She laughed in my face in answer. She remarked, "Good luck with that." When my parents learned about the official notice, they became enraged and said, "I'm not going anywhere." My father yelled at me over the phone, saying that I was ruining the family and that he had raised me better. Taking a different tack, my mother called me in tears to express her disappointment and her inability to comprehend her own son prioritizing paperwork before family. They both declined to take Sarah and the children in. When Sarah's ex-husband, who is also the father of her children, got in touch with me, I realized that things had taken an unexpected turn. Sarah had apparently informed him that the children would be staying with my parents rather than in my apartment. He was unhappy with the state of affairs and worried about his children's living circumstances. He said he had been attempting to acquire greater custody anyhow, and after hearing the whole tale, he offered to take the kids full-time until Sarah gets permanent home. Sarah went utterly crazy when she learned that I had spoken to her ex. She said I tried to take her children away and went behind her back. I no longer felt safe living in my own apartment because of her nasty behavior. While I continue to pay my rent, I have temporarily moved in with a buddy. Yesterday was the most startling development. I received a call from my landlord alerting me to a loud complaint coming from my apartment. He went to look into it and discovered that in addition to Sarah, her children, and her boyfriend, there were 2 other people, friends of hers, who had evidently moved in as well. This was my landlord's last straw. Now that formal eviction procedures have been started against Sarah for being an unauthorized occupant, he is entirely in favor of them. We must follow the correct legal procedures as she has established residency by remaining there. However, the lawyer for my landlord is trying to get things forward as quickly as possible. I've told Sarah that I won't take legal action for the damages and stolen goods if she vacates the property before the eviction is completed. If not, I'm willing to sue her for the entire sum in small claims court. Now, instead of being angry, my parents are trying to negotiate. In order to allow Sarah time to find a place without the blemish of an eviction on her record, they have offered to pay for a hotel stay for 2 weeks if I withdraw the eviction procedures. Since 2 weeks would probably evolve into another last-minute, urgent situation with the same demands, I denied this offer. Now, the larger family is split. While some family members are sympathetic to my plight and have privately offered their support, others still portray me as the bad guy who is torturing my sister and her kids out of self-interest. I've kept records of everything along this entire process. The state of my residence, the unapproved residence, the things that are missing, and any correspondence. Despite the tremendous pressure from my family, my lawyer friend reassures me that I'm in good legal standing. My relationship with my parents has changed, which is the most surprising result of this circumstance. Although I've always understood they gave Sarah some leeway, it's shocking how much they've disregarded my rights and boundaries in this case. This pattern has persisted throughout our lives, I've discovered. My parents allow Sarah to cause trouble, and I'm supposed to put up with both of them without complaining. I'm breaking that habit for the first time, and it's both devastating and empowering. As soon as the matter is fixed, I will publish a final update. Last update, conclusion, and contemplation. My previous update was 2 months ago, and now I'm finally writing this for my own apartment once more. The matter has been settled, albeit with considerable repercussions for the family. First, the useful result. Sarah was forcibly removed from my flat, along with all of her unapproved visitors. About 6 weeks after my last post, the sheriff finally arrived to serve the eviction notice, although the process took longer than anticipated because of certain court system delays. Sarah wasn't there when this happened. 2 days prior to the planned eviction, she had finally left the property, taking her remaining possessions with her. My place was in terrible shape. In addition to the harm I had already recorded, there were fresh problems: broken furniture, discolored carpets, holes in the walls, and what seemed to be intentional harm to my personal possessions that had been left behind. Although he was understanding, my landlord insisted that the unit be returned to its previous state. To speed up the process and regain my own space, I originally paid for the repairs myself, totaling about $3,700. Even though I had previously offered to drop the lawsuit if Sarah departed willingly, I ultimately made the decision to sue her for my missing and destroyed belongings. My viewpoint was altered by the intentional harm, and I believe she should be held accountable for her deeds. In addition to the $500 I borrowed from my lockbox, I received the whole $2,150 for the stolen and damaged goods. I didn't care if I ever saw that money, but I did care that the judgment was documented. In the aftermath for the family, Sarah is now residing with our parents. She had nowhere else to go after burning ties with several friends who had briefly taken her in, and exhausting all other choices. Her father, who saw the living circumstances in my apartment, and applied for an emergency custody adjustment, is currently the primary caregiver for her children. Sarah no longer has primary custody, although she does have weekend visitation. My parents and I no longer have the same relationship. They finally appeared to realize how bad the issue was when the eviction was put into effect. My mother called to apologize for the way things got out of hand, not for giving Sarah my key, or for invading my personal space. At best, it was a partial acknowledgement. My dad has been less cooperative. He insists that the legal path was an unnecessary escalation, and that I ought to have figured out a way to make it work. He is especially furious over the custody dispute involving Sarah's kids, which he strangely attributes to me instead of Sarah's decisions. We're talking again, but it's tense and we don't talk much. Sarah's predicament is off limits, and I've made it clear what subjects I'm ready to talk about. I've also made it very plain that they will never be able to access any of my residences again, and I won't be there to support Sarah in the event of another emergency. Though I still occasionally hear remarks about being the one who evicted his own sister, the extended family has mostly moved on to other dramas. I no longer justify myself or explain the circumstances. Individuals who are important already comprehend, and those who are not likely to do so in the future. The best thing that has happened is that I now value true friends more. My co-workers who put up with my inconsistent work schedule, my buddy who allowed me to remain with him during the eviction process, and even my landlord who supported me rather than against me. I learned what true support looks like from these people. I've also gained important knowledge on establishing and upholding boundaries. I was expected to adjust to the family dynamic for years, where Sarah's needs always came first. It hurt to break that cycle, but it was essential. I no longer feel bad about defending my own time, space, and assets. Since the eviction, we haven't had a straight conversation about Sarah. I didn't reply to her one text message in which she accused me of destroying her life and removing her kids. She's already starting fresh dramas at our parents' house and searching for her next chance to get out of debt, based on what I've heard from family sources. Although the entire journey has been draining and occasionally tragic, I am confident that I made the proper choices all along the way. My place is once again my haven. Now that I have a calm place once more, my work has steadied. Most significantly, I've made it clear that no one, not even my family, will take advantage of me. We are grateful to everyone who helped and encouraged us during this difficult time. During the toughest of the familial pressure, your affirmation kept me strong. When everyone else's definition of good requires you to give up your boundaries, your personal space, and your dignity, there are moments when you have to be the bad guy. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. I paid for my parents and sister to attend my wedding, but they never came. I exposed the truth and watched their lives fall apart. It said, "Your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. A beautiful whirlwind of flowers and laughter and love." When I began to plan mine, that's what I had in mind. I reserved the space in advance. I discovered a little but lovely establishment that wasn't very costly. Fairy lights hanging in a rooftop garden. I made sure there were vegetarian selections for my sister and champagne for my mother when I carefully chose the menu. To make it simpler for my family to attend, I even rescheduled the wedding to be closer to my hometown. I trusted them when they stated they couldn't afford it. I did, of course. I volunteered to assist. I went over everything with them when they were still hesitant. Hotel rooms, flights, and clothes. I covered everything, including my sister's husband's, so she wouldn't have to go alone. I convinced myself that it was worthwhile. When it counts, that family is there. I was still unaware that for them, simply showing there meant something much different than it did for me. I got up early the morning of the wedding. My best friend with whom I grew up texted me to let me know that he and his partner had landed safely. We used to trade Pokemon cards on the sidewalk. They had paid for the motel and purchased their own tickets. Just glad to be there, no drama. For my parents' flight, I kept refreshing the airline app in the interim. Arrived on schedule. Well, I thought, they will arrive soon. As a nervous adolescent waiting for a date, I waited in the dressing room, looking out the window every few minutes. When the officiant arrived at 3 o'clock, she smiled softly and asked if we were ready. I said, "We might need a few more minutes. They may have encountered traffic. Their phones may have died." I made a call, directly to voicemail. Called once more, no response. My hair was completed by the makeup artist. My bouquet was laying by the window when the photographer took these gentle pictures. I gave the camera a smile. I looked at my phone once more. Nothing has changed. My best friend leaned inside and knocked softly around 3:30. "They're asking if you want to start." My throat constricted as I gazed at him. I was to be escorted down the aisle by my father. He pledged. I forced a painfully wide smile and replied, "Let's just give it 5 more minutes." He pretended not to see my trembling hands, nodded, and waited with me. I gave another call. Voicemail. At 3:37, my phone finally rang. Mom's phone number. I nearly dropped it since I grabbed it so quickly. "Oh, hi, sweetie," said my mother. "Sorry, we couldn't make it." I blinked, unable to comprehend. What? What took place? She chuckled as if I were being foolish. Your sister's brother-in-law had a poetry reading. It was important to him and she didn't want to go alone. We had to support her. You know how family is. I remained silent. She brightened the stillness. You understand, right? My father's laughing voice could be heard in the background. Maybe next time. I was trying to comprehend that my parents had selected a poetry reading for my wedding, as I stood there in my wedding gown, makeup applied, flowers in hand. Not even her reading of poetry. Her brothers of her husband. Nor had they bothered to inform me. They simply let me wait. Let me get into a panic. Just until the music should have started, let me imagine that they were lost, injured, or en route. They allowed me to cover all costs. To make things easy for them, I'll move the entire wedding, but it won't be significant enough. I put my phone away at 3:45 and took a deep breath. There was still my best friend, there silently, ready to grab me if I fell. Would you, I said, my voice breaking, walk me down? He grinned, without hesitation. Of course. So I walked hand in hand with the lad who used to construct tree forts with me in the backyard, and who, when my sister laughed too much to assist, once sewed a Barbie dress with me. The ceremony continued. Vows were exchanged. The rings were switched. People cheered and applauded. There was a cry. Through it all, I grinned. I grinned till my cheeks hurt. I smiled till I lost all sense of reality. Jokes at the reception made me laugh. The cake was cut by me. Under the string lights I had strung myself, I danced with my new husband. Something cold and hard settled deep into my chest. I went to the little desk by the window later that evening, after everyone had gone home, and the hotel room door had softly clicked shut behind us. I opened my laptop and sat down. Still wearing his suit jacket, my husband walked carefully across the room. He questioned, "Are you sure you want to do this?" With my fingers already tapping the computer, I nodded without turning to face him. Yes. After a moment of hesitation, he remarked quietly, "You know, once you send it, there's no undo button." At that moment, I glanced up, gave him my full attention, and smiled for the first time that day. Everything is different tomorrow. I didn't turn around after hitting submit. It said that on your wedding night, you shouldn't reflect on the past. It is expected of you to look forward. Hope, new beginnings, and fresh beginnings. I made an effort. However, I couldn't help but think of my sister even as I cuddled up on my husband's side under the thick hotel blankets. As well as the years that preceded this. I was 3 planets away from my sister, who was 3 years older. In high school, she was the type of person who everyone wanted to be around. The one with the name brand clothes, the glossy hair, and the easy chuckle that made you feel like you should be thankful for the opportunity to be beside her. She wasn't nice. Not to those who weren't a good fit. Not to those like me. I used to witness it in the corridors of the school. Here's a small smirk. There was a whisper behind his hand. At times, it was clear. When a person wearing shoes from a thrift store passed by, there was a loud false cough. At times, it was so informal and well-practiced that you hardly noticed. However, I took note. When she laughed at me, I also noticed it. Her parents referred to her as selective. They said she had standards. My mother once said, "You can't expect her to be friends with just anybody," as I sobbed after being excluded once more. My father went on to say, "You need to toughen up. Not everyone's cut out to be popular." As if I were to blame for not being as brilliant as she was. She wasn't like me. It was sufficient that I have a few close buddies. I didn't require attention. Growing up, my best friend lived next door. We built Lego towns and made up stories about superheroes who baked cookies instead of saving the world on more afternoons than I could remember. He excitedly brought over a doll he had won at a carnival when we were 8 years old, and we gave it the name Captain Sprinkles. It was the funniest thing ever, in my opinion. My folks didn't. My dad once said, "Boys like that usually turn out funny." Loud enough for me to hear. It's no surprise that he prefers dolls to football, my mother joked during supper. It seemed nonchalant and dismissive, as if they were making a weather-related remark, rather than angry. Their sadness was not concealed. Not when I choose my quiet, eccentric pals. Not when I liked reading more than wearing cosmetics. Not when my sister left for another glitzy party and I stayed at home making posters for the science fair. I believe they suddenly stopped having high expectations of me and began having high expectations of her. My sister became their prize when we were teenagers. Queen of homecoming. Most likely to be successful. Every accomplishment she made was hailed as a badge of honor. Every act of brutality she committed was dismissed as a natural part of maturing. My parents hardly batted an eye when they discovered that she had been so severely bullying another daughter that she had changed schools. Saying, "Teenage drama. Girls are mean sometimes. It's normal." They hardly acknowledged my academic scholarship to a nearby college. No notification to the neighbors. No brunch. My mother remarked, "Well, you always were the quiet one," with a hazy smile that seemed to explain everything. I was already learning something significant at the time, but I was unaware of it. Love in our household was conditional. For her it was loud, but for me, it was silent. Performances, not perseverance, were the reason it appeared. And they stopped paying any attention to me when I quit entertaining them. The divide only grew wider as we grew older. Life seemed to be a stage that was made just for my sister. Internships she was not compensated for. Jobs she left behind. But the net was always there, regardless of how many times she fell. My parents are congratulating her, supporting her, and offering their apologies. I worked in the interim. I worked nights. I packed orders for my small internet business. Conveniently forgetting that I paid half of the mortgage. I paid the rent when they said I was fortunate to live at home. After that, I met my husband one summer. He was grounded, a couple of years older, and the first person I hadn't seen through my sister in a long time. He inquired about my work rather than hers. He didn't interrupt me. Instead, he listened when I spoke. He gave me hope that I might be sufficient, just like me. I went down hard. I saw that when my sister first met him. The flash of curiosity, as fast as a flash on a camera. Her smile widened. When she laughed, she leaned a bit too near. She used to twirl her hair when she was attracted to someone. She later attempted to run into him without my presence. Still later, she sent him a message. A casual, well-practiced offer to hang together without the younger sister accompanying. Nothing particularly scandalous. That should have been the end of it once he declined courteously. However, it wasn't. She sobbed as she went to our parents a few weeks later, claiming to have been wronged. Her words, "I saw him first. It's not fair." She was already seeing someone else, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter that he had never been hers in the first place. In our family, performance was more important than reality. Since she was upset, I was the bad guy. "Maybe you should think about your sister's feelings for once," she suggested to me. "Family is more important than some boy." My father concurred. Nobody inquired about my feelings. Nobody gave a damn. Her marriage was her fallback option. He was well off, reliable, and extremely giving. Ideal if the correct last name on wedding invitations was more important to you than true love. But she never stopped talking behind closed doors. I settled. He's boring but rich. He thinks he won the lottery. Poor guy. I listened to everything. The banter and the casual brutality. She had extramarital affairs. Sometimes after a few beers she boasted about it. My parents dismissed it with a laugh. My mother once said, "Marriage is complicated," while gesturing with her palm. Adding, "Boys are fragile," my father said. "Let her have her fun." I wasn't going to be the quiet one tidying up her mess, though. This time. Someone has to know the truth this time. Someone who wasn't worthy of being silently humiliated in private, like I had been for years. Perhaps it wasn't retaliation. Perhaps it was a show of solidarity. Perhaps I was just picking the side that no one else had ever picked for once. I shut down the laptop and inhaled deeply. I wasn't going to apologize this time, and tomorrow would be different. My phone was buzzing against the nightstand when I woke up, as if it were trying to get out. I was still sleepy when I opened one eye to see the stack of missed calls. 6 from home, 3 from my mother's phone, and 2 from a number I didn't recognize but felt bad about. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned over, covered my head with the blanket, and listened to the quiet hum of the motel air conditioner. The new law of life: they can SMS if it is sufficiently urgent. The text did indeed follow. Call us now. What did you do? Fix this. We need to talk. Without even reading the rest, I placed the phone face down on the nightstand. My spouse was stirring across the room, shirtless, hair disheveled, his wedding ring gleaming in the morning light. He muttered, "Everything okay?" "Family's in crisis," I admitted while dozing off. "It must be Tuesday." With a snort, he covered his head with the blanket. The first concrete hint of what was going on came to me around mid-morning. My relative, who was as socially conscious as a wet sponge, texted me. "Yo, heard your sister's husband dipped." Crazy. Family's freaking out. Dipped. To put it that way was one way. Over the course of the following few days, pieces gradually came in, resembling a jigsaw puzzle that is disorganized and has half of its pieces missing. It appears that my sister's husband had viewed the message I sent, or rather, the compilation of screenshots, recordings, and evidence, after the poetry reading. Evidence that his wife, whom he had helped through her resignations from employment, her breaking of leases, and her unfulfilled goals, had never appreciated him, had made fun of him, and had cheated on him. I had heard that there had not been an immediate screaming match. Nothing but quiet. A prolonged, perilous stillness. The kind where the actual harm was not yet apparent. The fallout became apparent in a matter of days. There was no big show when my sister's spouse moved out. By the end of the week, the divorce documents were filed. The invisible safety net my parents had never acknowledged they needed vanished along with him. He ceased making payments to my parents' company. Stopped making payments on their mortgage when unforeseen costs arose. Ceased offering courteous justifications for their inability to pay their bills in full on schedule. It was as if someone shut off a faucet from which they had been drinking without even realizing it. I took my own discreet actions. Canceled the temporary automatic payments that I had put in place 2 years prior. The ones that covered their emergency dental care, a portion of their utilities, and the cosign I created for their vehicle lease. Disconnected my accounts. My name was taken off the joint emergency fund. Moved my own funds to a more secure location where I wouldn't feel bad about utilizing them. I kept it a secret. No major altercations, just a silent disappearance. Financial ruin is a phenomenon that doesn't happen all at once. It seeps. Initially, credit card minimums are overlooked. The business invoices are then paid after the fact. Then, rather of sending courteous reminder emails, suppliers begin calling. The bank then regretfully notifies you that your request for a second line of credit was denied. Just as they had allowed their treatment of me to fester over the years, it was a gradual and agonizing process. Little betrayals, insults, and neglects added up until the foundation as a whole collapsed. I would often sit with it in the nights. The quiet, the lack, the odd pain of releasing oneself from something you've been pursuing your entire life. I had always imagined that it would be like falling off a cliff if I ever truly let go of my parents. It didn't. My ankle felt as though a weight had been unclipped. I wasn't going to fall. I was adrift. However, that did not negate the pain. There were quiet times when the grief struck more forcefully than I had anticipated. For example, when I was writing thank you notes to visitors, I thought of sending one to my parents out of habit before realizing they hadn't been present. Or when I saw a small Mother of the Bride frame in a store, and my hand grabbed out instinctively, foolishly, as if it still thought the appropriate people had given a damn. Another instance was when a stranger grinned at my spouse and me and remarked, "You must have such supportive families." And I had to chuckle because my family only had their own egos to uphold. When you survive individuals like that, you develop a certain kind of humor that becomes ingrained in your bones. Not the kind that makes you laugh aloud. Drained, exhausted, of course they did type. It's the kind of coffee you drink in a crummy diner at 2 a.m, just relieved to be somewhere else. Other adjustments also occurred. Quiet ones. I became pregnant about 2 weeks after the wedding. In the little hotel bathroom, with my back against the wall, and my heart pounding somewhere close to my ears, I gazed at the test. There was no plan. Just earlier than we anticipated. But not exactly unanticipated either. The world skewed slightly around me as I sat there for a long time, palms flat against the chilly tile. The only thing my husband did when I told him was grin, pull me in and say, "We're ready, you're ready." And I believed him for the first time in a long time. I kept my folks in the dark. Not even when the emails and texts began to come in. Certain news isn't the property of those who wouldn't be pleased for you. Some achievements are too valuable to give to others who merely want to use them as leverage. Their circumstances deteriorated in the meanwhile. I wasn't deaf, but I also didn't seek out updates. Cousins engaged in gossip. Curious texts were delivered by old neighbors. The long-muted family group chat was alive with secondhand anxiety. Revenue for businesses fell. A few sellers withdrew from sales. Bills were piling up. Smaller payments were first missed, followed by larger ones. It was not yet dramatic. There had been no court dates or foreclosure notices, but the strain was mounting like a little break in glass. They never arrived at my door. Not quite yet. Later, when situations worsened to the point that panic overcame pride, that would happen. But occasionally, I questioned whether they were taken aback. The calm one didn't fold, which surprised me. They had never realized how much they had depended on the phantom daughter. On the evenings when I sat at the kitchen table, I considered that. In front of me was the paperwork for the new house. With our feet intertwined beneath the chair, my spouse was looking through listings. On some nights, my dearest friend from childhood would phone. We chuckled at the time we unintentionally flooded his garage while attempting to construct a water slide and chatted about the old neighborhood. After the baby was delivered, half-serious arrangements were made to travel. Neither did he inquire about my parents. He didn't have to. The problem with true family was that they were aware of when survival depended on silence. It became evident that things were getting out of my parents' hands by the end of the 3rd month following the wedding. For some reason, their company's temporary shutdown for renovations never ended. Under the guise of downsizing for retirement, their house was discreetly put up for preliminary offers. People began to take notice. The invitations ceased. The pitying glances began. Just a quiet, steady unraveling. No big confrontations, no screaming bouts. Similar to how they had eroded my trust in them over a lifetime. And I drifted farther and farther away each day. Not tumbling, flying. It was raining the day they arrived. Not a romantic, sweet drizzle. The kind of rain that makes you question whether you should prepare an ark in case it happens, and slam sideways on windows. Really, it fits. The doorbell rang just as I was folding little onesies with soft gray, mint green, and tiny yellow stars. Not once. 5 times quickly, as if someone's entire palm was holding the button down. The sound made my husband freeze. The two of us exchanged glances across the kitchen. We were aware already. Through the peephole I took a quick look. They were there. At their feet were stacks of suitcases, jackets that are soaked, tight, angry grins. My sister and my parents. Like a threat. 3 faces I hadn't seen in months pressed themselves against the doorway. I took a while to open it, simply stood inhaling deeply while pressing his forehead against the soft wood. My spouse approached me from behind and placed a supporting hand on my back. Silently, "We can call now," he said. "Not yet," I said in a whisper. "Some things you have to see for yourself before you set them on fire." Without even saying hello, they shoved me when I eventually opened the door. Water from the rain trickled down the hardwood floor. In the center of the living room, my sister dropped her duffel bag. As if he owned the TV, my dad positioned himself next to it. My mother nodded tightly, as if she were anticipating tea service. My dad said, "We're not leaving," in a firm voice. My mother also said, "Not until you fix this." With an oddly quiet heartbeat, I carefully closed the door behind them. They jumped right in. A full-scale assault. They wanted me to give my sister's husband a call, tell him that I had lied, and explain that it was all jealousy, miscommunication, and a spiteful, nasty hoax. "You ruined our lives," my mother yelled aggressively. My father went on to say, "You embarrassed this family," my sister yelled. "If it's the last thing you do, you're going to fix this." In a tangle of fear, despair, and rage, their voices surged above one another. I let it pass over me as I stood there. At the time, I wasn't their daughter. I was a transaction, a duty. They kicked a broken vending machine in the hopes that the candy would still fall out. My dad made it official at one time. "If you won't help, we're staying here until you do." Daring me to dispute, he crossed his arms. My mother began discussing room division while he sat heavily on the couch. As if this had already been determined, my sister walked off toward the guest bedroom while pulling her luggage. Quietly, I laughed. It was ridiculous, not because it was humorous, because they hadn't been listening if they believed that I was still the girl who would allow them to enter and take control. Simply, "You're trespassing," I said. As if I had uttered a foreign language, they blinked at me. My mother remarked, "You invited us," in an overly high voice. Calmly, "I didn't even tell you where I lived," I said. Behind me, my husband had already started dialing. I caught him talking to someone in that courteous, businesslike voice he reserved for important matters. My father moved forward, menacing. "You don't call the police on your family." "Funny," I responded with a flimsy smile. "I thought the family didn't abandon you on your wedding day." Heavy and unsightly silence. I saw my mother's face flash with genuine dread for the first time. It took very little time. After 15 minutes, someone knocked on the door. 2 cops who are courteous and professional. I just pointed, gave my ID, and displayed the lease agreement with just my husband's and my names on it. I didn't have to say much. My sister and parents were asked to leave by the cops, allowed them time to quietly pack up. Naturally, my sister yelled at me, accusing me of being callous and ruining the little family I still had. My mother sobbed. Threats were whispered beneath his breath by my father. However, they eventually departed, carrying their drenched bags back into the rain, while being watched calmly by 2 extremely patient police officers. I collapsed onto the couch, suddenly worn out, as the door closed behind them. My spouse sat next to me, warm and quiet. Like a reminder, the baby gave a little kick. Now, this, not them, is family. We moved again later. Discovered a home further away, nearer to the lifestyle we truly want. We did not send out a change of address. Few people were aware of our location. Occasionally, my best friend and his partner would come over with amusing presents and tales of their travels and late-night dining in other locations. The life with my parents that I had dreamed of. Simple, encouraging, and unrestricted. I constructed it somewhere else. I made it better. I heard the fallout from mutual acquaintances and distant cousins. My parents' beloved home, which they had boasted about, sold at a loss. The company has left. Accusing everyone but herself, the sister who was always too good for punishment is now crashing on couches. I didn't make contact. Not after the divorce was declared final. Not at the time of filing for bankruptcy. Not when all the posts on social media vanished like wine poured on a dusty floor. I had believed that cutting them off would be like losing a limb or ripping something out of myself. However, it didn't. It was like the first time you realized you were never broken and got to your feet. All along you were simply seated in the wrong spot. The little mint green onesie is still folded and stashed in a drawer. The first one I purchased. The one about which I was terrified to speak. The one for which I at last understood that I didn't require their approval. My child will never grow up believing that love must be earned by doing good deeds. In his own house, she will never feel inferior. She will understand the true meaning of family. The nicest part is that they won't even be aware of her name. I question whether I went too far at times. If it was truly important to transmit that message, cut them off, and contact the cops. But then I remember who I was as a girl. The one who continued to be tolerant. The person who never gave up. I also understand that I didn't go very far. They simply never imagined that I would go anyplace. However, I would be interested in hearing your thoughts. Did I make the correct decision? Tell me in the comments below. Additionally, remember to hit subscribe if you would like to hear more stories like this one. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. Unemployed and seen as a burden. I moved back home until my mom threw my bags at me and kicked me out. That moment changed everything. Logan is my name. I'm 28 years old, and I didn't choose to live in my parents' guest room until about a month ago. To be honest, I would have been anywhere else if I could. However, plans don't always work out. I got a good job at a mid-sized software company after earning my degree in computer technology. The epidemic then struck. I was among the first people laid off when the company downsized. I applied to hundreds of jobs over the course of the following year and a half. There were interviews, but none of them lasted. My finances eventually ran out, and returning home was my only remaining choice. I assumed it would be short-term. Neither did my parents. It wasn't terrible at first. Mark, my father, was always more of a don't ask, don't tell type of person. But it was my mother, Diane, who made sure I felt the impact of every food I consumed and the light switch I turned. At least once a week she would comment, "This isn't a hotel." If I were to leave a cup in the sink, she would sigh loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. I initially attributed it to stress. However, the passive-aggressive remarks quickly evolved into outright criticism. As she wiped the already spotless kitchen counter for the 6th time that morning, she would remark, "You know your cousin Rachel just bought a house, and she's 2 years younger than you." Or, "You're still here at your age, which is really sad. By the time we were 28, your father and I were raising you." I made an effort to assist. I volunteered to mow the grass, cook, clean, and fix the router when it malfunctioned. Where I could, I worked as a freelancer, creating websites for nearby companies, and assisting a family friend with the launch of an online store. I wasn't just watching TV while sprawled out on the couch, but it didn't matter to her. I remained the leech. The fact that my younger brother Jordan was their heir apparent didn't help either. He's 24 years old, lives in a downtown high-rise, works in finance, and makes sure everyone knows it. Except on holidays or when mom implores him to join her for supper, he seldom ever comes. However, it's like Moses separating the Red Sea when he enters. All of a sudden, my mom feels happier. Her voice becomes pleasant and upbeat. "My baby is there. You look really toned. Are you exercising?" In the meantime, I'm trying to blend in by hiding in the corner with a trash bag full of recyclables. I sensed it building when Jordan stopped by for supper one evening. They always treat me like I don't belong, so I was setting the table, putting mismatched plates down with the same carelessness I've become used to. Jordan hardly gave me a look. He mentioned the expense of gas and how fortunate some people are to not have to commute. I didn't fall for it. However, once he said something, Mom gave him a drink and burst out laughing. "Have you even tried applying for real jobs lately?" she questioned, turning to face me. My chest constricted. She didn't care that I had already told her about my 2 interviews that week. Jordan added his voice. He didn't even look at me when he continued. "You know, at some point it stops being bad luck and starts being bad choices." That was the night that everything broke. I didn't shout. Nothing was thrown at me. Just like I was 12 again, I picked up my plate, went back to the kitchen, and ate while standing at the counter. In the dining room I could hear them giggling. I heard some of the phrases, but they were hazy. "Can't cuddle forever," "needs to grow up," and "embarrassing at this point." The following day, Mom entered the room as I was working on a freelancing project that involved revamping the website of a nearby bakery while sitting in the den with my laptop open. She didn't knock. She didn't knock. I sensed something was coming when she crossed her arms and stood at the doorway. "You must begin making rent payments," she stated bluntly. I gave a nod. I have previously heard this. "I promised to assist once I finished this site." They're making payments. Maybe someday is not what I mean. Now I'm speaking. Today? I looked at her perplexed. "You want me to use money I don't have to write you a check?" "No, Logan. I'd like you to mature. We've had enough of this. We've gone above and above. You are merely a leech that feeds on us." I was surprised by how hard the word hit me. Leech. As if I were something stuck to the bottom of her shoe, she stated it with a disgusted expression. She turned and began hauling a duffel bag out of the closet before I could even respond. She rushed back into the room, tossed the bag at my feet and yelled, "Go leech somewhere else," before I could even react. I refrained from arguing. I refrained from crying. After packing my laptop, charger and toothbrush, I zipped up my bag and headed off. Not a word. I could hear the word leech echoing after me down the driveway. I spent some time couch surfing, first with my friend Lucas, and then for a few days with my ex, who graciously allowed me to remain with him while I worked things out. But despite how frightening it was, that time alone motivated me to give it my all. I started working as a freelancer more, and even assisted a local artist in creating an online store to sell her prints. Suddenly one evening, I received a message on LinkedIn from a recruiter who had viewed my freelance portfolio. I was interviewing for a remote job with a tech startup within a week, and I was hired. It was a good wage. Enough to begin taking back my life, but not Silicon Valley money. The finest aspect? Complete benefits and the ability to work remotely were included. Thus I took a step that even startled me. I purchased a small studio apartment with the money I had been saving from freelancing. But mine. I couldn't be separated from it by anyone. I couldn't be considered a burden. I moved in about 3 weeks later. I saw that my dad had called while I was doing a project. I let it go to voicemail because I hadn't heard from him since I left. Not even a, "How are you?" Then there was another call. Then a text. What caused our account to be frozen by the bank? I blinked. What? Then I recalled something that had been on my mind for weeks. Dad had requested me to assist him in changing their joint banking arrangement back when I was unemployed. He wanted me to set up their internet access, mobile banking, and, most importantly, connect their account with their tax software since he was sick of driving to the bank, and I was skilled with technology. I had guided them at every turn. My phone number and email were listed as recovery contacts. On their joint account, I even served as a secondary administrator, not to make any purchases but to troubleshoot in case something went wrong. Yes, that access was still available. I took a while to respond. I just sat there and gazed at the message. My dad was fumbling with the bank app, and my mom was pacing as they sat at the dining room table. Perhaps even contacting the hotline, only to be informed that they would require access from a secondary contact to restore control due to a verification lockout. I typed up a response at that point. Asked the leech. Not a single emoji. No justification. Only those 3 words. And everything detonated less than an hour later. My phone began vibrating once more before I had a chance to prepare lunch. My mother missed 3 calls in less than 5 minutes this time. Then the text began. Mom texted, "Logan, this isn't funny. Call your dad back. We can't pay the credit card bill. Are you really doing this to us after everything we've done for you? Fix this." I didn't respond. I had leverage for the first time in years. And I had no intention of wasting it. Retaliation for the sake of cruelty didn't interest me. However, I desired responsibility. They never cared to acknowledge the version of me that I wanted them to see. The person who kept their household together in the background, did things like pay their bills online, update their antivirus software, remind them to file their taxes on time, troubleshoot their Wi-Fi, and even flag fraud charges on their card before they noticed, was not the lazy burden they had imagined. To them, however, I was merely a resentful freeloader. I received a call that night from an unknown number. I gave an instinctive response. "Logan." My dad was attempting to sound composed, but his voice seemed strained to me. "We must access our bank account, you see." They said, "It's locked." "You are classified as the secondary administrator," they said. "I have no idea what you did, but—" "I did nothing," I stated calmly. After several unsuccessful attempts to log in, the security system automatically locked it. All right. It's okay. Simply assist us in unlocking it." A pause occurred. I didn't answer. He paused. "Please." Like a foreign language he hadn't spoken in years, the word came out clumsily. "Yes," I said. "But first, I would like to discuss something." "Keep quiet. For example, why did your wife call me a leech, hurl my belongings, and yell at me in front of Jordan?" One more pause. "Logan, let's not—" "No. We will. Do you want me to tidy up your mess once more? After that you will pay attention. Not speak. Not an excuse. Simply pay attention." The person on the other end sighed quietly. He didn't hang up, though. I didn't request to relocate. I had no desire to return to that house. But I tried my best to assist. I prepared food. I did some cleaning. I made things right. I earned money. Just enough to cover my personal expenses and give you gas money in case the car broke down. I was treated like a stray dog at your dinner table in spite of all of that. "Logan, I'm not finished." A slight crack came to my voice. Years of annoyance were rising to the surface of my throat. I had swallowed everything back. She called me a leech every time they phoned me. I was booted out like trash by her. You simply stood there. You permitted her. He didn't answer. She treated me like a helpless loser and humiliated me in front of Jordan. The fact is, though, your bank account? Because I've been the one maintaining it that way, everything has been going nicely. Without me, you had no idea how to change your password. All right, he confirmed. Your point has been made. Number I haven't. I got out of my chair and began to walk about my tiny flat. While I was already on the ground, you two pretended that I was a failure who needed to be kicked. You need me now. Long pause again. Yes, he acknowledges at last. We do. Those 3 words' simplicity struck me more strongly than I had anticipated, and not in a positive manner. It's more akin to an unexpected windstorm that leaves you gasping for air. Because I knew at that moment that they didn't give a damn about my difficulties. Only when I was helpful did they notice me. I wasn't cruel, though. I wouldn't be spiteful enough to ignore invoices. However, I also wasn't going to ignore this as I always did. I proposed terms. I'd get the account unlocked. But first, I wanted each of them to apologize. An actual one in person. Furthermore, it goes beyond simply murmuring sorry, as Mom pretended nothing had happened, and Dad fidgeted. I desired recognition. I also desired space. For at least 6 months, no favor requests will be accepted. Don't feel guilty. No unexpected visits. Additionally, I would permanently remove myself from all of their financial tools as an administrator. I said, from now on, you can handle your own banking. Or ask Jordan for assistance. My father sighed once more. This won't sit well with her. I didn't enjoy being kicked out of my childhood home. A brief hush fell. I'll speak with her. The call was cut off. My hands were shaking. Part rage. A little adrenaline. I'm a little depressed. I had never communicated with my father in such a manner, not once. I didn't feel horrible though. Not now. It took me 2 days to receive a response. This time it was a brief, strangely formal email from my mother. There was no signature, and it began with, I realized I said things I shouldn't have. It concluded with, we hope you're doing well. Mom. No love. However, I received what I requested. I quickly deleted myself from the account after unlocking it. Then, for a week, I blocked their number. Just to breathe. Not to punish them. To reflect. Then the actual fallout began. The problem is that everyone realizes how much they depended on them when the leech leaves, and the person performing all the invisible labor is removed. I learned what transpired next from my cousin Lily's Instagram story. Not from a phone call, or a knock on my door. While at Grandma's place for Sunday breakfast, she had captured a brief boomerang film. Mom was seated rigidly at the far end of the table, her lips pursed like she had just bitten into a lemon, her wine glass unopened. My father, who appeared to have recently learned how to use the internet, and failed, was by her side, massaging his temples. Jordan meanwhile sat across from them, a troubled face replacing his arrogant smile. That was novel. The headline read, when the group project lost the only person who knew how to do anything. Family drama. I sent her a direct message asking, what happened? Your mom has been trying to figure out how to log into her online banking for a week, she said quickly. This morning, she locked the account once more. Jordan somehow made it worse when he came over to mend it. You intentionally sabotaged it, she says now. I was genuinely astounded by how quickly the responsibility had come back to me as I gazed at the computer. However, I was unable to feel even anger, simply exhausted. The kind of fatigue that is more profound than sleep, because it was back there. Regardless of how much I contributed. Regardless of how silently I labored in the background. I became the antagonist in their tale the instant things went wrong. But it didn't end there. My dad apparently discovered he hadn't saved the login information for the new system I had put up for them last year, after I had removed myself from their tax filing access. Customer service requested him to confirm his most recent return, which I had, of course, sent to him via email with a password stored in a private Google Drive that he no longer had access to. If Jordan hadn't made the wise decision to start fresh and attempted to open a new account using my dad's social security number, it might have been recoverable on its own. The system locked everything, including his HSA portal, online statements, and tax software, after identifying it as possible identity fraud. They were unable to obtain a dime. With the excitement of someone watching a soap opera unfold in real life, Lily told me this. Your mom told Grandma that she thinks you hacked them out of revenge. I simply replied to their text. I forewarned them. I had to. I gave them a clear, hard, and boundary-defeating warning. Not dangers. Not games. Limitations. They also acted as though I was bluffing. My apartment door was knocked on a week later. Before I even peered through the peephole, I knew it was them. When someone stood in the hallway of my building, there was a particular type of echo. Heavy, slow, and unhurried footsteps. Slowly, I opened the door. My parents were standing there. My dad wore a slightly crooked tie, as if he had dressed quickly, and my mom held her pocketbook like a shield. They didn't say anything. I moved out of the way. Save it if you're here to shout. They entered. Before my mother cleared her voice, there was a complete minute of stillness. We need your assistance. She told me to go leech somewhere else and tossed out my bags 3 weeks ago. Now she was standing in my small flat, glancing at the simple IKEA furnishings and half-eaten takeaway on the counter, while pleading for assistance. It seemed unreal. I already knew what had happened, even if my dad tried to explain it. Jordan was probably too ashamed to acknowledge that he didn't know how to fix something that wasn't in Excel, so he tried to fix it, failed badly, and then abandoned them. My mother muttered, "We are unable to even access our joint savings. Our mortgage payment was late. Late costs are being assessed to us." "That sounds terrible," I answered. "You must feel very trapped." When she raised her head, the outrage had vanished. Her voice wavered a little. "I apologize," she said. I blinked. Not aggressively passive, not with any restrictions. "I apologize. We didn't realize how much you were doing," my dad continued. "We believed we were being kind by allowing you to stay with us, but we failed to observe it. The dam cracked then, not for them, but for me. It all came out. All the burden I had been carrying, all the hurt, guilt, and hidden resentment. Not when shouting, not crying, just the facts." I described to them what it was like to be compared to Jordan all the time. To be viewed as a failure, despite my best efforts to survive. How their approbation never seemed to be based on effort, but rather on performance. And how I realized how disposable I was to them after being expelled. Which was more than just embarrassing. My mother sat motionless, taking in every word as if it were painful. She complained, "I had no idea. I think she's real. In a way. She probably didn't want to know. There is a distinction. I was invited to return. To assist. To restart everything. Claimed to compensate me for my time. Claimed that things would change. I shook my head though. I'll show you how to fix everything. I'll compose the guidelines. However, I will not be returning. I work. I'm under a lease. I am at peace." They appeared taken aback, as though this little studio apartment was a kind of defiance. But it was a haven for me. I sat them down after grabbing my laptop. Fixing everything, including resetting access, confirming identification, and contacting tech support, took 2 hours. Most of the time, my mother was quiet. Every time he had to respond to a new security question, my dad would mumble to himself, "This is ridiculous." After we were finished, I shut down the laptop and got up. I said, "I'll forward that instruction document. But I'm done after that. Administrator access is no longer available. Being the silent tech support is over. You are grown-ups. You will discover the solution." They also stood. My father gave a nod that was nearly courteous. My mother didn't say anything more, but it seemed like she wanted to. And I experienced freedom, something I hadn't felt in a long time as they left. I would like to say that was the end of it. That they were mindful of my boundaries. That we all went on with renewed respect when they learned their lesson. But it takes time for families, like mine, to transform. They didn't suddenly become self-aware or humble by flipping a switch. The full story starts with what actually transpired next. I began receiving strange messages 2 weeks after they moved out of my place. No, not from my folks. To my amazement, they actually left me alone for a bit. It came from others in their vicinity. On Facebook, my Aunt Cheryl sent me a message. "Hey sweetie, heard you moved out on your own. That's so great. Diane said you've been distant lately. Just wanted to check in. Everything okay?" Then I received a screenshot from my cousin Trevor, showing my mom going off in a group chat. "I think Logan's being manipulated by his new job. He's different, cold, distant. I don't even recognize him anymore. All I did was ask for help and he acted like I'd kidnapped him." Jordan came next. He wrote me a lengthy, conceited email, Hey man, I understand that there has been conflict, but I believe you too need to accept some responsibility. Even though mom and dad aren't flawless, they are still our parents, so perhaps you should be more understanding rather than placing the blame on them. We all go through difficult times. It doesn't mean that everything is against you. Let's talk soon, perhaps over coffee. I didn't respond and erased it. You see, this wasn't about one argument, one insult, or one terrible day. And that's what none of them understood. What still didn't click. Years passed. Been the default assistant for years. Despite being extremely tech-savvy, the person was never welcome to the adult table. While Jordan's every modest victory was lauded as though he had cured cancer, I spent years watching my triumphs be dismissed. Jordan received pricey watches and family dinners, but the birthday card said, "Perhaps next year will be better." Death by 1,000 small wounds. I didn't seek retribution though. Not the dramatic, trivial sort where you hack into someone's social media accounts or damage their credit. I desired something far more permanent. Separation, self-respect, and the fulfillment that comes from creating a life without them at its core. That chance arrived sooner than anticipated. My company revealed that they were creating a satellite office in Toronto and growing its remote division approximately a month after our previous conversation. A few of us were given relocation bonuses, and I took advantage of it. A new beginning. A brand new city. No family visitors. I leased a modest one-bedroom apartment in the heart of the city, with a view of the skyline and a desk in the corner. It was mine, although it wasn't particularly showy. Not a dime of assistance from those who referred to me as a leech, paid for by a job I earned. Before I went, I sent my folks one last email. I wanted to be transparent, not because I owed them anything. Subject: revised hello. Parents, I wanted to inform you of my impending relocation to Toronto for work. Going forward, I won't be available to assist with any problems, technical matters, account access, or anything else. I promise you have complete control because I have disassociated myself from everything. I hope we may all find some serenity in this new chapter. Be careful, Logan. No answer, no thumbs up at all. And it may have hurt in the past, but not now. Toronto fulfilled all of my expectations. I rapidly made friends, joined a local coding group, and began volunteering at a nonprofit that promotes computer literacy among senior citizens. Whenever I sat down to instruct a grandmother on how to configure two-factor authentication, I thought, this is what patience looks like. This is what respect feels like. At home, the fissures continued to widen. My unofficial family reporter, Lily, informed me that my mom had begun attempting to persuade Jordan to perform some of the duties I had previously performed. He claimed to be overly occupied. She continued to try to guilt him in spite of it. She once remarked to Logan, "Logan used to handle all this without complaining." "Then maybe you shouldn't have treated him like garbage," he retorted. It seems that their golden boy had his limitations as well. Then the worst part arrived. On their taxes, my dad made a mistake. A large one. An audit was initiated when he inadvertently entered their mortgage interest in the incorrect part of the form. Just enough of a red flag to need them to go back and refile and speak with the IRS regarding years' worth of inconsistencies, but not enough to warrant a frightening federal probe. They attempted to contact the tax software provider, but to their astonishment, they were unable to access the recovery email. Since I had shuttered it after severing links, it was now permanently disabled. They needed an accountant, an actual one, who didn't answer texts at midnight and charged $150 per hour. However, the money wasn't the true source of the anguish. The control was the issue. They were accustomed to always having someone nearby. Someone who, out of fear, shame, or a great need for acceptance, would make things right instantly. That individual is no longer with us. They didn't even inform me about the audit. It was Lily, of course, who told me. "Your mom's been in a bad mood for days. Dad messed up the taxes." She argued something like, If the leech was still around, this wouldn't have happened. LOL. It dawned on me then. She continued to refer to me as the leech despite everything. Of course, not in front of me, but behind closed doors, in the security of those she believed would support her. And that ought to have been painful. It ought to have caused the wound to reopen. However, it didn't. Because I had evidence by then. Evidence that her perception of me was false. I had a fulfilling job. Friends who held me in high regard. A landlord who had faith in me. A group that depended on me. A name on a lease. A bank account. A life in digital form that was entirely independent. And on a cold Toronto evening, in the solitude of my apartment, I went down at my desk, accessed my old Google Drive, and erased the final shared folder I had ever made for my parents. The title of it was, "Do Not Delete, Banking for Parents." With a single click, I removed it. Then I grinned. Since leeches don't create life, individuals do. And I at last recognized myself. Thanks for watching and being part of the drama. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a wild news story. I spent years bailing out my brother, giving him money and support. Until one night he showed me how little I really meant to him. I'm James, and I'm 28 years old. I'm the type of man who has heard it all the time. Family comes first. Perhaps it was the way our mother brought us up after our father departed. Or perhaps it was simply something I held on to because it provided some warmth to my existence. For whatever reason, ever since I can remember, anytime my younger brother Sean has ripped anything apart, I've been the one picking up the bits. He's too young to give a damn, yet he's old enough to know better at age 26. Sean has always had a lot to offer. When things go well, he's the golden boy. When they don't, he's the ghost. And I suppose I was the fool who believed that he would ultimately grow out of it if I simply provided enough love, support, and affection. As is typically the case, it began modestly. "Hey dude, I don't have enough money for rent." He only sent this one SMS, and made a desperate call since his account was frozen and he had forgotten about his credit card charge. It was only temporary, I reminded myself. As the months stretched into a year, the sums increased, but I reminded myself, everyone struggles a little in their 20s. $1,200 to fix his automobile, $200 here, $600 there. Sean always had the same grateful, wide-eyed expression, swearing that this would be the last time. I really wanted to believe him. He made another call around 3 days prior to New Year's Eve. This time I was in line at the grocery store, carrying a bunch of items for a small private gathering I had organized with some friends. His speech was hurried and out of breath. He had already had his automobile repossessed due to non-payment, and he was on the verge of losing it again if he didn't pay $2,500 right away. He cried and begged, saying that if he lost the automobile, he would be left jobless. That he was at last taking his life seriously. I sent him the money against all my remaining common sense. I kept it a secret from everyone. A part of me felt ashamed of how readily I gave in. The problem is that you can ignore someone for a long time when they reveal themselves to you. However, even the thickest rose-colored glasses eventually break. On New Year's Eve, Sean announced that he was going to a party in a nearby town. I thought he would be occupied with his normal activities, such as getting wasted and making promises he wouldn't remember the next day. Along with a few close pals, I stayed at home. We played board games, counted down the clock like children, and consumed much too much junk food. It was pleasant and serene, unlike anything I had experienced in a long time. I even began giving myself permission to think that perhaps this year will be different. Perhaps in 2025 I would no longer feel as though I was always dragging my brother along with me. Then my phone broke just as everything was falling into place. Sean had sent the text. "All you are is a burden. Avoid it." That was it. No apology, no explanation, nothing. 7 words that were more powerful than any blow ever could be. I initially assumed that must have been an error. He might have been intoxicated. He might have intended to text someone else. I blinked and gazed at the screen for a long minute, reading it again as if I looked closely enough the words might change. However, they didn't. The group conversation then became active. Pictures of Sean lifting a glass with some of his party friends while beaming broadly. One of them wrote, "Freedom from leeches. Knew you knew me," as the caption for the picture. Sean was prominently shown, appearing to be completely carefree. It was as if the thousands of dollars I had struggled to make ends meet meant nothing at all. As if I meant nothing at all. I remained silent. I didn't answer. I didn't yell at him, call him, or send him a lengthy text message in rage. I simply sat there and allowed the icy emptiness to take me. I pretended to smile and said I was simply exhausted, but my buddies must have seen the change. But where that gentle hope had been, something hard and sharp began to grow inside. That night, I hardly slept at all. I kept thinking about all the times I had saved him. Every time I stood in his way of facing the punishment he deserved, he would smile, give me a slap on the back, and immediately resume his destructive behavior. That's when I realized I hadn't been doing anything for him for years. I had been giving in to him. He didn't see me as his brother. I was an idiot, a crutch, and a pocketbook. When daylight finally arrived, I knew precisely what I had to do. I started by opening my laptop and retrieving Sean's auto loan payment history. Finding the document with my name on it didn't take long. Naturally, he asked me to co-sign when he was in a dire situation, and the dealership didn't believe his credit score. Technically, I was still the car's primary owner. When Sean received the keys, he didn't even read the fine print. All he wanted to do was show his friends his new, sparkling toy. Next, I retrieved the bank statements, which displayed the number of payments that had been temporarily deducted from my account while Sean was getting back on his feet. Rather quickly, temporary life had become permanent, and I'd let it happen like a fool. The best thing is that a tow order was already in place in case Sean missed any more payments because he had already missed so many. He was also 2 days past due. Once more, it would only require one phone call. Around 8:30 a.m., I arrived. Before he could even pull himself from the residence of the stranger he had fainted in. The towing business claimed they would be pleased to expedite the pickup after instantly recalling the case. All I had to do was verify that I was the legal owner. I grinned. Yes, I am unquestionably the owner. I was enjoying a cup of coffee and watching the tow truck pull back into Sean's driveway when I parked my car across the street from his house at 9:45 a.m. Sean's automobile was still there, crookedly parked as if he'd stumbled out of it last night without thinking twice. It was a gaudy little red Mustang that even on his best days he couldn't afford. Within 5 minutes, the Mustang was off the ground, swaying slightly as the tow truck driver fastened everything into place. The driver had jumped out and connected it up with professional speed. I noticed Sean's front door creaking open as he drove away. He had a wild mess of hair, was barefoot, and had no shirt on. He was obviously attempting to take in what he was seeing, as he blinked against the morning sun. He stood there frozen for a moment. Then, shouting something I couldn't hear from my car and swinging his arms, he ran toward the street. Not even slowing down did the tow truck. I barely heard Sean's voice shouting down the street as I rolled down my window. Hello? Confused and in a panic. After that, my phone broke. A call is coming in. Sean. I saw it ring. Give it another ring. And once more. His first text message of the morning appeared on my screen when it eventually went to voicemail. Where's my C, dude? Leaning back and allowing the sun's warmth to penetrate the cold morning air, I placed the phone face down on the passenger seat. I didn't feel like the one bearing dead weight for the first time in a very long time. But I wasn't done yet. Not at all, as the actual storm was still approaching and Sean's car was only the first step. I just let the sensation take hold for a few more minutes as I sat there. It wasn't precisely happy. It was more serene than that. Akin to being on the edge of a field after everything had been destroyed by a fire. Free, empty, and charred. A new beginning. My hands stopped shaking. I didn't have a racing heart. I wasn't rushing to mend Sean's newest catastrophe for the first time in years. He left a mess for me to clear, and I wasn't running to pick up bits. At last, I was allowing everything to crash as it should have. The actual consequences started as soon as I arrived home. Sean destroyed my phone. 6 missed calls, 12 and 19. Texts began to pour in, first in a confused panic, then in wrath, and then, as they turned the bend, in full-on rage. "What did you do? Respond to me. This isn't amusing. I'm going to call the police." I laughed at that one. He might give it a shot. The documents and the title were in my name. Legally speaking, Sean had been using my car for months without making any payments. I was doing precisely what I was legally allowed to do, if anything. Sean, however, was not the kind to let the truth hold him back. He was beating on the door of my apartment by midday. I didn't respond. The muffled thuds of his fist hitting the wood, the occasional shout of, "Open up," and the words, "You're ruining my life," drifted through as I ate a sandwich at my kitchen table. I had an exact mental image of him. Hairy, bloodshot eyes, pacing like a stymied animal, blaming everyone but himself. He changed his strategy after seeing that I wasn't going to the door. He placed a message beneath the door. It took me an hour to even pick it up. I did, but there was only one phrase, written furiously in black marker: "You'll be sorry." That's Sean, always threatening to do something when he couldn't win a fight. I reclined in my chair and gazed at the ceiling, reflecting on all the events that had preceded this, bending for years, years of repressing disappointment and rage. I kept convincing myself that if I waited a little longer, he would change. As I ate ramen noodles for dinner, I reflected on the times I had paid his rent to keep him from being evicted. He had squandered his money at a casino, so I sold my game console, my only true outlet, to pay his utility bill. The birthday presents that were supposed to arrive but never did. When he said he would reimburse me the following week, it invariably turned into the following month. The following month always turned into a never. Worst of all, I recalled his smile when he was feeling good. Before he decided I was a burden, a parasite and disposable, I was all charm, bright teeth and backslaps. I was no longer expendable. His number was not blocked by me. I didn't have to. It was so much sweeter to ignore him. It was a silent form of retaliation that tasted better than anything dirty or noisy, so I let him scream into space while I went about my day. The following day, I gave the bank a call regarding the account I had foolishly left open for him to begin saving under my supervision. Surprise, surprise. Once more, it was overdrawn. No more. I took a lunch break and closed the account. He claimed he never used the credit card, but I canceled it since he had a secondary user slot on it and had accrued $1,200 in Uber Eats and bar taps. I canceled it, paid the remaining balance myself, and severed all financial ties between us. Cutting the final rotten rope from a sinking ship was how it felt. The last component then arrived. Just before New Year's, I sent him $2,500, do you recall? Yes, my bank handled the wire transfer. I also had the receipts to show it wasn't a gift, because Sean had texted me to promise to pay it back as a loan. That afternoon, I submitted a small claims lawsuit. I didn't anticipate receiving my money back. I didn't care that Sean was having trouble making ends meet. I wanted it documented. I wanted to serve him. Like a foul stench, I wanted the paper trail to follow him everywhere. By the time the court date arrived, I pictured him attempting to explain to a judge how, despite his declaration of freedom, a few well-placed signatures were still able to bring him down. I wasn't finished yet, though. I began going through every email, every receipt, every favor, and every payment. After a long, chaotic year, I quietly and precisely chronicled everything, much like an accountant balancing a ledger. Yes, it was emotional, but it was also exhausting. On some nights, I stayed up too late, questioning whether I had gone too far. I might as well forget about it. But then I recalled how Sean had looked at me in those pictures, smiling, toasting to his freedom from me, raising a glass, and laughing with his buddies. Let go of the man who never turned out his lights. Get rid of the person who filled his tank with gas. No longer bound by the man who fought his battles for him when he was too weak or sluggish to do so yourself. I wasn't wanted by him. Okay, I was finished. When I received a very intriguing piece of mail a few days later, the final piece, the one that would truly cause everything to fall apart, fell into place. I was trying to get Sean a better deal on his insurance. Therefore, it was a notice concerning his coverage, which had been combined with mine. Due to non-payment, his coverage was cancelled. I was aware that Sean was unable to pay for his own insurance. I was also aware that he had most likely not even realized yet, but he would, particularly after learning that driving without insurance wasn't merely a minor in our state. He could face severe fines, license suspension, and, let's face it, a rough time if he was pulled over or involved in an accident. I felt the weight of the envelope as I sat on my couch and turned it over in my hands. There was no gloating, not even joy. Relief was felt. I was relieved that I was no longer carrying it. Sean was relieved that he would at last experience true consequences for the first time in his life. And the repercussions was going to be stunning when it did come. But I simply had to wait first. Await the subsequent call. The subsequent frantic knock on my door. The following text is a cry for assistance, and I would be prepared when the time came. It took very little time. 3 days later, just before noon, Sean's name appeared on my phone once more. I didn't respond. All I did was watch it ring. My stomach's old knot of guilt, which used to tighten, is smaller and looser now. After a minute, a text message appeared. I really need your assistance, bro. I put the phone down, this time facing up, and returned to my coffee, giving him time to process the fact that the bridge he had destroyed would not magically repair itself. Another minute went by. I'm trapped, man. Please. Was stopped. No coverage. They're discussing towing once more. I promise to repay you. Hurry up. It nearly made me chuckle. Nearly. The irony was simply too flawless. He was unaware that there was no longer an automobile that could be towed. The Mustang had long since vanished. It was already up for auction 2 states away from the loan business. Regarding his license, they would be able to see the unpaid infractions he had accrued under my insurance without having to pay a thing if they were thoroughly reviewing his record. The kind of mess that takes more than a few words of apology to resolve. There was another text. Bro, please, I beseech you. What I do matters to me. It dawned on me then. The desperation had become real. Sean didn't usually cry like a crocodile. They were the ones he paraded whenever he needed cash or pity. This was raw, ugly, and real. I ought to have felt guilty. Once, perhaps. I would have a long time ago. However, I only experienced a somber sense of fulfillment. The kind that eventually becomes a weight off your chest after years of being exploited, disregarded, and thrown away. One more call. One more voicemail. He left one this time. At first, I didn't open it. For a time, I just sat there and gazed out the window, watching the clouds pass in thick, sluggish clumps. The world was peaceful now, and I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next calamity to hit my door. Sean's voice sounded little and defeated when I eventually listened to the voicemail. Man, please, James. I mean it. I can't drive the car, they remark. They claim that they will tow it. I have no other people. I promise to find a way to reimburse you. Just one last time, please. I am aware that I made a mistake. I'm aware that what I said wasn't appropriate. Don't leave me like this, please. I apologize. It was there. I've been waiting for this apology for years. And it had no meaning whatsoever. As it wasn't authentic. Not because he knew what he was doing. It wasn't because he understood how much he had offended me. He needed something, that's why. Once more, always. I didn't answer. Rather, I launched the app for my bank account. The new, pristine one I had just started a few days prior. And gazed at the balance. Mine. Safe. Undisturbed. It seemed to be a little, concrete indication that I had at last prioritized myself, that I was no longer the family ATM, and that I wasn't responsible for Sean's errors. I looked over his social media later that evening just out of curiosity. Although I shouldn't have, I did. From the side of the road he was posting an angry, blurry selfie with police lights flashing in the backdrop. Some people are only concerned when they are in need. I suppose it's better for me to have no false family. Rust betrayed, most where knowledge gained. The remarks were harsh. The majority came from his party friends, who delighted to add insults but didn't know half the story. Some are sympathetic, but the most are merely joking about being arrested or getting wrecked to start 2025 off right. Some of our common friends sent comments inquiring about his well-being. I remained silent. The post didn't appeal to me. Sean was somewhat correct, so I wasn't even tempted to. Fake family was better for him. I was too. When I woke up the following morning, the flat was peaceful. Just sunlight streaming through the blinds and the quiet, steady hum of a life that is now becoming mine again. No desperate texts, no missed calls. Feeling lighter than I had in years, I took a stroll about the neighborhood and breathed in the cool January air. Waiting for the next explosion is over. Fixing those who didn't want to be fixed is no longer an option. Sean had one more message waiting for me when I returned home. This time it wasn't furious. It wasn't an emergency. There were only 2 words. I apologize. Sean apologized, but I didn't respond. After the first time, I didn't even open the mail again. Nothing else could be said. I did not despise him. It would have been simpler to hate. To be honest, hate at least suggests that you are still concerned and that you have a keen sense of life. Distance was what I felt now. It was similar to glancing at an old photograph of a life I hardly recognized. Sean stopped talking for a few weeks. No phone calls, texts, or unexpected visits. I wasn't sure whether he had finally figured it out or whether life had just swept him away for a bit. I didn't chase him anyway. I didn't follow up. For once I paid attention to my own life. When I did, the speed at which things began to alter was almost shocking. I began returning to the gym. Just for me, not for anybody else, and not to prove anything. I made contact with old acquaintances that I had gradually lost touch with over the years. Friends who were fed up with my being treated like a doormat have quietly moved on. I even began taking on additional job shifts. I had ambitions of my own now. Things I wanted to save for, and places I wanted to see. Not because I needed the money to clean up someone else's mess. Sean's world, as I imagined it, diminished as mine expanded. I ran across an old mutual friend of ours who used to know Sean well around 2 months after that crazy New Year's Eve. We met one Saturday afternoon at a neighborhood coffee shop, and his name was Nate. In the uneasy dance of 2 individuals who have too much history in common and not enough recent connection, we engaged in the typical small talk. But Nate eventually mentioned Sean. "Have you recently spoken to your brother?" he questioned, not looking up as he stirred his coffee. "Nope," I replied plainly. Then, as if unsure of my level of interest, he looked up at me. With a shrug, I said, "He's, not doing so great, man." Nate nodded slowly and said, "Not really my problem anymore." "Yeah," I assumed. "I just wanted to let you know. He's currently living with a female and barely making ends meet. He lost his job a few weeks ago and he's reportedly already overdue on his rent." I remained silent. What could be said? Sean's path was always going in this direction. I had been in the way, fixing every pothole he stumbled into, and that was the only thing that had ever delayed it. After hesitating, Nate continued. "He's been telling everyone that you left him homeless and abandoned him." I chuckled quietly to myself. Just exhausted, not even resentful. It sounds about right. "You're not angry." "No," I told the truth. "I just finished." Saying it aloud brought a certain calm. After giving me a clumsy shoulder clap as if he wasn't sure how to handle the subject, Nate and I parted ways. Later that evening, I considered Sean's version of events, in which he fabricated the victimization to fit his own narrative. How he most likely portrayed me as the unappreciative, nasty sibling that kicked him when he was on the ground. I used to care what other people thought of me. I used to be consumed with it. No more. If the people who mattered cared enough to find out, they would know the truth, just as I did. It was a slow spring that year. Clear blue mornings that make you want to roll down the windows and drive aimlessly replaced the chilly, dreary clouds. I started simply getting in the car, choosing a direction, and driving away. About 40 minutes outside the city, I found myself on the outskirts of a little village one Saturday. Nestled between a second-hand clothing store and a bakery was a little bookshop. On a whim, I stopped by and spent 2 hours looking through old paperbacks and discussing my favorite authors with the proprietor. I purchased a handcrafted journal, a few books, and a couple of mugs. Even though it was just a Saturday spin done the way I wanted it to be, free of commitments, urgent calls, or impending danger, it felt like the greatest triumph of my life. I received a letter in the mail a few days later. Not emails or texts, but actual mail. I could tell right away that the handwriting was sloppy and hurried. I nearly tossed it away without opening it, Sean. Nearly. However, my curiosity overcame me. There was only one page of paper inside. James, I understand that you most likely don't give a damn anymore, and I wouldn't hold it against you. I wanted to apologize for everything. I was self-centered. I exploited you. Since you were my brother and that's what brothers are meant to do, I told myself it wasn't that horrible. I now understand how much I used and hurt you. I apologize. The only person who ever made a sincere effort to assist me was you. Now that I think about it, I wrecked it. My goal is to improve. I'm not counting on you to believe me. All I wanted was for you to know. Even though I didn't deserve it, I am grateful for everything you did. I sat there for a while, Sean, flipping the letter over in my hands. It was the most sincere thing he had ever spoken to me. More truthful. And perhaps, just possibly, this time he meant it. I didn't write back though. Not out of spite, not out of rage, but out of comprehension. Not all life chapters are intended to be revisited, not because of hatred, but because rebuilding them would only result in the same circle of pain. Some bridges remain destroyed. Allowing someone back into your life is not always a sign of forgiveness. At times it simply entails sending them best wishes from afar. After carefully folding the letter and putting it in a drawer, I continued with my day. And I came to a lovely realization when summer finally arrived, bringing long evenings and bright golden light. I was no longer surviving. I was still alive, and I was just bearing my own burden, not anyone else's. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.